Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silent reflection in honor of those that serve to defend our freedoms.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Lisa, can you please read the Open Public Meetings Act announcement?
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Mount Olive Township, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same.
Roll call.
Mr. Perkins?
Here.
Mr. Mania?
Here.
Mr. Ferrante? Mr. Nicastro?
Here.
Mr. Walsh? Mrs. Laybow?
Here.
Mr. Roman?
Here. Well, let the record reflect that Mr. Ferrante and Mr. Walsh are due shortly. All right, the first item on the agenda is presentation of donations from Temple Helvetica. Rabbi Rubin.
Mr. Mayor, members of the Town Council.
You can go to the podium.
My name is Moshe Rudin, Rabbi Temple Hatikva. I'm joined by Reverend Becky Tani, the pastor of Abiding Peace Lutheran Church, and by Father Stanley Barron of St. Elizabeth's Roman Catholic Church. We are delighted to make a presentation to the Township, to the Bud Lake Fire and Rescue, and to the Mount Olive Township Food Pantry, and to the Mount Olive Fire and Rescue. On behalf of our diverse and united communities of faith, we recently had a walkathon to benefit our township, and we're overwhelmed by the response of people of faith, of all faiths in Mount Olive. And we'd like to make the presentation of 3 separate checks, each one for over $1,200, to support a charitable giving in our township. And we thank you for the opportunity to do this. So, as a representative of the of Mount Olive Fire and Rescue, saw people in
Flanders, Bud Lake, and
right.
whoever else is here on behalf of the rescue squads. Brad.
And I'd like to ask Deacon, sorry,
Joanne?
Jose,
Health
to just come up and take
food pantry.
pictures so we can
Yes.
let those that took part in the walk know that the money has been duly presented. I also just want to mention that the houses of worship that take part of the Mount Olive Clergy Association are Abiding Peace Lutheran Church, United Methodist, United Presbyterian, Temple Hatikva, St. Elizabeth's Mountaintop Church, and Crossroads Community Church combined for the benefit and good spiritual material and otherwise of the citizens of our township. So if I can make sure we're all in there.
We'll get the picture in a second. If I may, Council President, on behalf of the Town Council and the municipal government in Mount Olive, as well as the rescue squads, we're very grateful for tonight's presentation and for all of the good work that you guys in our religious community do for the township throughout the course of the year. And thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Move Larry 50 away from the light.
And I just want the record to reflect that the Mount Olive Food Pantry is being represented by Joanne Lepre. And Rabbi Rubin, I share in your enthusiasm and your support that the demonstration of the community of Mount Olive, that even in these tough economic times, they're able to give of their heart and give to those of us that are less fortunate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is presentation to the high school girls lacrosse team. Before we get to that, I'd just like to read out a couple of the accomplishments of the high school girls lacrosse team. They went undefeated in the regular season play at 12-0. They finished the year at 15-2. And this marked the most wins in a season in the history of the program that began just in 2005. The team won their conference, the Colonial North, for the first time in the program's history as well. This year, the team also won their first state game, defeating Fairlawn in the first round. The girls also beat Roxbury and Randolph. Thank you very much for that one. For the first time ever, 5 players were selected to the All-County team, and 8 players were named to the All-Conference team. This was a season of a lot of firsts, and these girls have raised the standard and reputation for not only Mount Olive girls lacrosse, but I think you also raised the bar for the boys. I'd also like to make some individual recognition. Alex Tepper, first team All-Conference, second team All-County. And by all means, as I call your name, can you please step up to the podium? Brianna Shakespeare, first team All-Conference, third team All-County. Francesca Verone, first team All-Conference, and honorable mention All-County. Alina Santana, first team All-Conference, third team All-County. Sabrina Malusi, second team All-Conference. Nicole Amata, second team All-Conference and honorable mention All-County. Marissa Ferenc, second team All-Conference. And Shannon Dyer, honorable mention All-Conference. And Mr. Mayor, I'm about to join you at the podium. Can the rest of the girls please?
If I may, Alex, you know, it was very exciting. I was actually watching the team's progress all year long. 1 win, 2 wins, 3 wins, 4 wins, 5 wins. And the girls were matching the boys as the weeks went along in terms of wins. The boys went 8 or 9-0 before they finally lost their first game, and you guys didn't lose. So it was really an incredible year. We're all very proud of the program and hope that it will continue next year and for years to come as one of Mount Olive's finest athletic teams at the high school level. We have certificates for all of you. Did you want to read out the names, Allison?
Yes. Amanda Annenson.
Not here. We'll keep that one. She doesn't get it. Just kidding.
Callahan. Shannon Dyer.
There you go. Congratulations.
Samantha Evans. Steph Frischia. Steph Holonsky. Young Jung Hong. Samantha McQuiston. I know this one's yours. Sabrina Malusi.
Congratulations.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure it's that.
Alina Santana.
My friends just went to this guy's restaurant.
Tess, how are you? Yeah. Do you want to take all of them once they're done? I will. Oh, okay.
Alex Tepper. Gina Almeida.
Not here.
Nicole Amata.
Not here.
Marissa Ferenc.
Congratulations.
Shayla Holloway. Okay. Kelsey Ireland. That I know.
Congratulations, guys.
Amber Radio. Brianna Shakespeare.
Hi, Brianna.
Francesca Verone. Kelly Bertetas. Okay. Rachel Hansen. Claire Callahan.
We also have certificates for the coaches, who I assume are not here this evening, are they?
You guys.
Thank you for assuming that. Thank you.
Which is a good thing. Did you want to come up and say anything about the team this year? Or?
Well, I just.
Come up here.
We are extremely proud of the girls, their commitment to excellence and setting these goals from the start of the season and accomplishing them along the way. They paid the price every single day, and you can't ask for anything more than that as a coach. And I appreciate the town council acknowledging all of their accomplishments this year. Thank you.
See you guys back next year.
Can you please let the record reflect that Mr. Ferrante and Mr. Walsh are in attendance? Okay, the next item on the agenda is safety plans at the Mount Olive High School. Mr. Jeska, would you like to speak first? Oh, I forgot
Forgot a few things, Alex.
Dave, I apologize. I jumped over one more thing. Next up is the Financial Scholarship Award, Jerry and Jack.
Alex, there's two things.
No, the Linda retirement, she's not here.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start. Mr. Mayor and Council, as many of you know, Sherry Maniscalco, the CFO, and I have awarded a scholarship to a deserving Mount Olive High School senior for, actually it's now 11 years. We started this thinking that we both were in the same position as they were not too long ago, and a scholarship would really, really be helpful. So we award this scholarship to someone who's interested in a career in business, finance, or accounting. And every year I have to say I'm very surprised at how tremendous these candidates are. They seem to get better and better every year. When you take a look at their resumes and see what they've done, it's just absolutely unbelievable. And this year we selected to be our scholarship recipient, Stephanie Lopez. Come on up, Stephanie. Stephanie really exemplifies what we all would like to think our young people are, who are very interested in their careers, but she not only exceeds academically, but both volunteering in the community and participating in extracurricular activities. She works very hard. She's actually a waitress at Valentino's. She's very active in her soccer. She plays club soccer as well as for the school. So we really felt she was a great candidate, and she has a great personality too. So we really loved her. So Stephanie, congratulations, and we'd like to present you with this plaque. Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to say a few words too.
Sure. Never.
You're never lost for words.
That's not true. I'm from the school that people don't really want to hear politicians talk, but in this particular case, congratulations. I'm sure it's very well deserved. I was advised that she will be attending TCNJ come next year, which is very exciting, and congratulations again to you and your family.
Thank you very much.
Why don't you step forward?
My brother disabled my phone.
Trenton, College of New Jersey, or the College of New Jersey.
Thank you.
Okay, we're next up to discussions on the safety plans at the high school. I'd like to first start off by at least hearing from the parents.
Actually,
So-
Alex, if I may, if you
Sure.
don't mind, I put this on the agenda. I'd like to at least lay out what had occurred, where we're at, so how we got to this point today.
So you want to start off with the chief?
No, what I want to do is take care. What I'd like to do is just explain how we got to this point, and then start with the chief in terms of what they looked at, in terms of the issues at that particular intersection, what suggestions they have, and then hear from the residents in terms of what their concerns are, and also what suggestions they may have in terms of making this a safer crossing for the students, so that we can come up with the right solution at the end of the day for a problem which obviously has been identified by an accident at that intersection.
Yeah,
If you don't mind.
By all means, I'd like to hear background, but I, for one, at least would want to hear from the parents' concerns first. So, that's,
It's your meeting.
So,
I.
So if you want to if you want to start off with background, that's fine. And what had it transpired. But I'd like to start off with hearing the parents, voice their concerns first.
It's your meeting.
Mr. Jessica?
Thank you, Alex. I guess I'll save the majority of the background for Mayor Greenbaum to go through, but for those that aren't aware, I live across the street from the high school. A couple of my neighbors' daughters were in an accident, and we've all read the papers and the varying perceptions on how badly they were hurt. Don't want to get into that part of it in this meeting. We've been swapping some emails with a number of you, talked to Chief Spitzer, et cetera, about some of the engineering plans that we have that have been discussed for remediating the situation. And I'll admit I'm encouraged by what we heard, what I've heard, and what has been discussed with the remediation plan. I'm curious to hear if there's been any further progress with it. But on one hand, it's tragic that the events had to happen in order for us to get to this point. But based on the conversation, it sounds like there is some real action being taken to at least deal with the traffic issues at that intersection. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to hear what's transpired since our last conversations with the plans, and comment after that.
No problem.
Cool.
Rob?
I was away in South Jersey, and I learned that the accident had occurred. That two of our residents, students at the high school, had been hit by a school bus that was exiting the high school in morning rush hour time frame. I spoke to Chief Spitzer right away and asked him to immediately take a look at that particular intersection to make determinations as to how the accident occurred, which obviously is within the scope of what he is charged to do, and to look at the history at that intersection as well as possible solutions. I also spoke to Chief Spitzer about, in the interim, while he was doing an analysis of the intersection, to have a police officer stationed at that intersection during the morning hours until we came up with a conclusion as to whether or not that intersection actually constituted what I will call a dangerous intersection, or whether or not this was an accident which was caused by other factors. The police department immediately undertook their obligation to make certain determinations as to that intersection. They looked at the history of accidents at that intersection, which up until the point of this horrific accident, and I would comment by saying that one accident at that intersection is too many accidents, but there had been no prior accidents at that intersection. It's very clear from anybody who has been at that intersection that there is a significant amount of traffic in and out of the high school between, let's say, 6:30 and 7:30 in the morning. Probably a shorter time frame, but for purposes of this discussion, I'll say 6:30 to 7:30 in the morning. There was a tremendous amount of traffic going in and out of the high school. Both Scott Van Ness and Chief Spitzer looked at all of the data and have ultimately came up with a recommendation as to what they thought was the appropriate fix. The appropriate fix at that intersection is what is required to make it safer. It is not a cost analysis. It is what do we need to do to prevent another accident of this type from happening, no matter what the cost may be, no matter what the solution is to the problem. Now, recognizing that we have a number of different roadways throughout Mount Olive which students traverse and cross, which haven't yet been the subject of accidents and hopefully never will be. But you have to take a look at each situation on its own, make a determination as to how the accident occurred and what changes can be made to make it a safer intersection. With that, we met the Monday following the date of the accident with Chief Spitzer, with Scott Van Ness, Sean Canning, Tim Quinn, and Dr. Larry Reynolds, as well as Anthony Giordano, Board of Education, and we talked about the findings of the police department, which I will let them talk about in a moment. All agreed at that point that there was, as to the cause of what we believe to be the cause of the accident and what we believe to be the appropriate solution at that time. Not long afterwards, I had a call from Scott Ireland, who indicated to me that the parents in that area felt that they had been left out of the decision-making process. After having considered that, and we hadn't come to a final conclusion at that point in time, nor are we at a final conclusion now in terms of what is the right fix. I spoke to Scott and had him get the word out, and I also spoke to Lisa and to you, Alex, to make sure that we had an open forum here this evening so that we could hear from parents, not necessarily about the accident or how the accident happened or about the town's response to the accident, but we wanted to hear from the parents as to what they believe the appropriate fix to the problem is. We can all sit here and blame each other or talk about, necessarily what the town did right or wrong after the accident. The bottom line is that what we really need to do is to focus on making sure that it never happens again. So that really was the purpose here this evening, was to give everyone a chance to participate in the forum, to give their points of view in terms of what might be the right solution to the problem. And with that, I would turn it over to Chief Spitzer and Scott Van Ness at this point in time to talk about their analysis of the accident and what they believe to be, at this point, after having considered everything that they've looked at, what they believe to be the right fix to this particular problem at this intersection.
Chief, if you wouldn't mind, we're just going to change tapes for a second. All right, Chief.
All right, thank you. The first thing I wanted to do is, Mr. Jessica, you had said something that you didn't want to get to the roadside that day. I think that something needs correcting there. For those of you that there was an article in the newspaper. I guess I should stay back there. Yes. There's an article in the newspaper that that said that the police said that the injuries were less than they were. And I would really like to address that because my good friend Phil Garber, and I still consider him a friend, I think he was untruthful with his report that day. The day of the accident, I went to the accident, as did Scott and a few other police officers. I didn't get to talk to any of the are the parents here today of the two girls? No?
Excuse me, Chief. Please speak into the microphone. We're not picking you up.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I project, though. I didn't get the chance. Yes, a parent here. I did not get a chance to talk to the parents. I didn't know who was. When I got there, I just assumed that the first aiders were treating them, and it wasn't my job to do that day. But when we left that scene that day, 2 girls were taken to the hospital. 2 of, I believe, 5 children that were crossing the road. All 5 of them very easily could have been hit, and 2 of them were hit. and they both hit their heads. And when they left, the only information we had was from first aiders who said that one was worse than the other. They think that one was going to be released later on in the day, and the other one, they didn't. They thought one was going to be released early in that day, and the other one was going to be checked, but they expected them to be released later that night. That's only first aiders at the scene, and they're certainly not medical doctors. And I can tell you in the last year, everybody here knows that probably my best friend in the world had a head injury, and he was taken to a hospital, not expected to have any problems, and spent 3 months in a coma. So I really recognize how dangerous a head injury is. I just didn't know the information. I got a call later that day from Phil Garber, and I think so did Scott, saying, what is the condition of the kids? We said, as we understand it, one has been released, and the other one is supposed to be released. That's probably not a good idea on my part. It was just a straightforward response to a question, and we learned later on that that wasn't the case, that the girls were, both girls were more seriously injured than thought at the scene. And one, I guess, in particular was more injured. So the first thing is that we believe that that accident was a serious accident, although a slow speed accident and an accident in an intersection that we don't have a lot of collisions at, but it is a very, very busy intersection. We recognize that. So I just wanted to tell you that we recognize that it's a tough intersection out there, and that those injuries are severe. The second thing was the idea that that there was no fault in this accident because of the idea that there's sun glare. Sun glare played a very big role in this accident. It just did. It's an environmental factor. The bus driver did have sun glare, but it's the bus driver's responsibility to stop in an intersection where they can't see. So ultimately, responsibility is going to be laid sometime down the road, but it's both. It's a sun glare issue and a driving issue. So we're not trying to do anything with that. It's just simply how it is. Since this happened, Mayor Greenbaum has done everything he said. He's directed us from the beginning to make sure that we reviewed it and saw what we could do with it, and we have done that. In a second, I'll turn it over to Scott, but it's we've looked at that intersection, and there are several things we've heard from people both directly and indirectly that they think that somebody should be at the intersection to direct traffic. It's not our belief that somebody should be there to direct traffic. I'm sorry, that we heard that we should have a crossing guard there. It's not our belief that a crossing guard would have stopped this particular accident, and that most of the issue up there is one of traffic flow and not so much students crossing. Now, I know that there are people up there in the neighborhood, and we went up there that day, and it was a bad day to see how many people crossed because it was pouring rain like it is today. But our guesstimates are that somewhere between 5 and 10 or 15 kids cross there on any day, and they're kind of sporadic. They go. Some people come from up in the Victoria Drive area and cut through the back roads, and some kids come down the sidewalk right on Corey Road, and then there's some that come from Raymar Street and cut through onto Patlin and Jacinda. I don't know if I'm pronouncing those names right. But any day there are a lot of students in that area that could use it, but we just don't see it that much. And we also noticed that the traffic flow, especially the pedestrian traffic flow, is the heaviest in the morning. It doesn't seem to exist as much in the evening. It's probably because, like, some of the kids, I see that we have our lacrosse kids here today. Some of the kids play sports. Some of them are in the robotics club. Some of them leave on the bus and take the bus home to another place at that time. But there's less of a flow later in the day. So what to do about it? We've examined it, and we there are several things we can do. Usually, when we change a traffic flow, we do it through one of three things, or a combination thereof. We do it through enforcement, engineering, and education. And the engineering part of this, I'm going to turn over to Scott. There have been suggestions from putting in speed humps there to painted channelization and several other things. And I'll let Scott talk a little bit about that, and then I'll jump in where I think it's necessary.
Good evening, everybody. What you have in your hand is a map drawing of one of the concepts that we have decided that we'd like to move forward with. What you're looking at is a narrowing of the travel lanes. Currently, the road there is about 30 to 33 feet wide, which leaves 15, 16-foot lane widths, which makes people feel very comfortable, allows them some excessive speed at times. By narrowing the lanes, by installing a painted median, we will effectively slow some of this traffic. It will also, in some ways, stop some of the passing on the right that occurs as you come down Corey Road towards Flanders Neck on in front of the school. That could actually mean a little bit more of a traffic backup in the morning, but it will have accomplished the goal of slowing traffic down and making the intersection safer by having less maneuvers that occur in it. Included in the center of that median will be a 25-mile-per-hour sign as you approach the area, and then as you get to the intersection, there will be a center of the road sign, stop for pedestrians and crosswalk. There will also be additional signs placed where the new crosswalk will be installed. There will be a new crosswalk installed on the north side of the intersection. If you look at the drawing, the longer side with the less trees is basically going up the hill away from the school. The other side is going down the hill towards Flanders Neck on. The crosswalk will extend just a few feet onto Patland as there's no sidewalk there. However, the road is wide enough to allow a 3 to 4 foot striping area to kind of indicate where you should be walking towards when you cross the road. Yes, some people will already probably question, well, that makes our kids walk across the street twice now. If I put the crosswalk, or I'm sorry, if the crosswalk is installed on the south side of the intersection, we will have accomplished nothing as far as the environmental factors that exist at that intersection. The sun glare is pretty fierce in the morning. If you have ever traveled down that road at that hour, this time of year, the fall, the sun glare is intense, and you will not accomplish anything because the sun glare will still be the problem. Our kids will have to cross in a sun glare blocked crosswalk and so on. Now, yes, traffic headed down the hill towards the school will still have to deal with sun glare. But by narrowing the lane, it will, and again, lessening the maneuvers that are allowed there, it's that many less cars that a student in the crosswalk has to maneuver around. There will be an additional crosswalk upgraded across the school entrance. And we were also going to take a look at some of the landscaping that is on the private property there to see if something needs to be trimmed back for better visibility.
Scott, we had talked about traffic flow in and out at that intersection. Where do we stand with that now?
We still have to have further discussion with the Board of Education and the school itself regarding having people who come in and drop off and want to leave the property right away, having them exit out the rear of the school as opposed to coming back out the front of the school. We feel that by eliminating the exiting traffic or reducing the exiting traffic onto Corey Road, that will also alleviate some of the pressure that that intersection suffers from every morning.
Just to explain that to everybody here, one of the thoughts was that as you come into the front of the high school, there is traffic that comes obviously from Corey Road and makes a left across the road coming down. There's traffic that comes up Corey Road, makes a right. There are a few cars that come from Patland and Yosinda across the road. Buses are coming in. Students that drive in and park. Parents that drive in tend to drive in. There's 2 or 3 different ways they go in when they're in there. I believe that the flow that the high school wants them to do, I believe that they want them to drop off at the loop by the cafeteria. But people come in and some squeeze by and get in by the buses and they go in that way. Some come into the parking lot and drop off by where the handicap spots are now. Some people come in the back of the school and quickly drop off. And I think the school does everything they can to stop that from happening. But basically the loop road that they want is next to the cafeteria. Then the parents that do drop off and leave, coming in from this busier intersection, go in and come back out, and then you have traffic that comes out and either makes a right or a left. Our thought was to try to get traffic to move when they drop off, come in and then go out the back of the school now onto Flanders Road. It's kind of a work in progress. We don't know for sure exactly what's going to happen when we do that, and it obviously takes behavior change, which would be us going up there, police officers going up there, kind of handing out flyers, the school maybe putting out a Honeywell message and doing all that stuff. It's not something that we would see until the beginning of September, in the beginning of the school year. And trying to get them to, instead of coming back out onto Corey Road and making a left, coming back onto Corey Road, if you're going to make a right, you go right. Otherwise, you go back out the back of the school. And we realize that that's a behavior change for a lot of people, and it'll take some time to work that in, but it would eliminate some of the traffic coming out there. I know that Dr. Reynolds is concerned with some of the traffic in the back with regard to that, and there's another crosswalk in the back of the school that we'd have to worry about with that.
Scott, just a couple questions here. Those little signs that you have that are right in the middle of the intersection, are those going to be permanent signs?
Yes. They're a little deceiving on the picture. It's kind of my best computer graphics imagery. The sign that you see on Flanders Bartley Road, have you seen that sign that's down in front of the
crosswalk, they're about that high, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
By the old AMP. It's a center-mounted sign, but it will be within the middle of the median, the painted median that is developed.
So I'm assuming it's not going to make any issues as far as the turning radius of a bus?
Absolutely not. It'll be placed in a manner that is conducive to that intersection.
Okay.
Some of the history, for those that live up there, they probably know it better than I do. We've both been here over 25 years, and I know that Corey Road has gone from I think it's gone from a 30 mile an hour, 45
once,
to a 30, and then reduced to a 25, especially right in front of the school. Then brought back up to a 30. I'm sorry. 35, I'm sorry, 35 and 25. The 25 starts coming down Corey. I think that the sign is right about Schoolhouse, and to me it seems like that could be moved back a little bit, or it could be, or we could have a reduced speed ahead sign or something there, because by the time you see that sign, you're on top of where you need to be slowed down for. So that's something that certainly can be corrected.
There were three things that I heard, which I'd like you to address. One is posting a crossing guard at that intersection and why you don't believe that's the best fix for the solution, and your experience with crossing guards generally. Secondly was the speed tables on Corey Road, and I don't know whether or not that's something that you would address or Tim Quinn would ultimately address. And the third issue I had heard was perhaps placing a police officer at that intersection at that time. And do any of those make any sense in light of what you've looked at?
Let me start with the first one. Let me start with the police officer. The police officer that's one of those things that is somewhat cost prohibitive. And it's not so much that it's 1 hour a day. And how do you get 1 hour a day out of a police officer? We just take the police officers that are already working, and if they're available, we schedule them there. But they're usually not available. And to be quite frank, they're not going to be up there most of the time. A police officer, just the way the way that contracts work and all that, you're not going to get a police officer for an hour at a time. So you could hire somebody privately to do that, but I don't think that that's going to solve the problem. I just don't. The crossing guard part of it, there are things that open up when you do a crossing guard, but the crossing guard is supposed to, they're supposed to cross you. They're supposed to step out and stop traffic, and they'll be stepping out and stopping traffic where you think it's already too dangerous for your kids to cross. So we think that the engineering things were going to change it. And frankly, a student that's 16 years old or 15 years old, we want them to be able to cross a road by themselves, but we want to be able to do it at a safe intersection. So there are many places in town where we're asked to put crossing guards, and that's kind of prohibitive to put them all over the place. They don't direct traffic. They just simply step out with, they step out with a paddle and stop traffic and let the children cross. Some of the things we discussed were there are buses in that intersection at that critical time, like with the critical time for we're pretty much identifying it as about 6:45 to about 7:05 at the high school entrance. Some kids get there a little bit early, and some they drag their feet a little bit and they get there a little later. But that seems to be the time most of the, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems most of your children are across between that time. Some people get there early, but most people don't get there late because there's penalties for coming late. Lost my train of thought there. So that the crossing guard would simply and you also get them in gaps. You got five children that came from that one group, and then one or two in other groups. You wanted to address the speed tables. Yeah, to address the speed tables. I'll get my train of thought back.
Okay, the speed tables have been a consideration, and they are not off the table as of yet. They are quite expensive, but there are certainly issues with them as far as grade of the roadway, the width of the roadway, drainage considerations, and so on. There's also some Department of Transportation rules. We may exceed traffic volume that would allow them to be placed on that road. That is still a couple questions that are up in the air. I did have a discussion with the Department of Public Works Director, and we spoke about possibly temporary speed humps or speed type tables that could be installed and removed as necessary. They would not be able to be there, obviously, in the snow and during snow situations. And it's unlikely that they're going to, watch the weather and run out there tonight and remove them if it's going to snow tomorrow. They'll probably not be there during some of the heavier winter months, which defeats some of the purpose of having them there in the first place. Those are still considerations that we are looking into.
The temporary ones are the rubber ones you see in some parking lots. Is there anybody here that's against speed humps? And I'll tell you why, because a lot of them cause noise, and some people that live right next to there, we've had complaints on that there's all day long, it's bump, 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 and we've had that kind of thing put in and had people complain about that. Is there anybody here in this room that's against speed humps?
Excuse me. I apologize. If we're going to take any from the audience, unfortunately, you have to step up to the mic.
So maybe afterwards.
Yeah,
but
we're definitely going to have questions from the audience.
Okay.
Ms. Labo, you had a question?
Well, it's about the speed tables. A resident had called me earlier today, but if you're going to, just that she's at the end of the road, and speed tables would really interfere with the drainage and the flow, rain and snow melting, and Tim's already aware of the issues that she has, so she's not in favor of them because of that situation. I told her that's certainly part of the consideration with them, and that's where we do run into problems with drainage. So I told her I would relay that, so that's why.
That is definitely a consideration that we are looking into. There are also some options with these speed tables that we're looking at that are actually separate pieces. And they're lower, and so if they're lower and they're separate, they're not as effective.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, well, I've heard for a long time that there's a speed problem on Corey Road, as other roads in the township, Clover Hill Drive, Connolly Avenue, Crenshaw Drive, and the speed problem is a problem all over town, probably all over New Jersey, if not all over the United States. But I think it's pretty clear in this particular instance that the accident was not caused by speed. It was caused by traffic flow and sun glare and whatever other issues, but it wasn't speed that caused the problem. And that's why I was most attracted to the concept of changing the traffic flow at that intersection during the time frame that the morning buses and the student drop-off and the student drivers are at that intersection at that time. And I was all for changing that to an in-only entrance to the high school around back until Dr. Reynolds raised the point, well, then you're taking traffic further into the high school, and are you going to have problems with the kids who are crossing from the back parking lots now coming to the high school? So, I agree with you, it needs further study, but in terms of that intersection, the real change needs to be a reduction in the amount of movements that are coming in and out of that intersection at that time. For instance, you had a bus driver who I'm sure there was a lot of traffic coming both north and south on Corey Road at that point in time, and she's trying to judge getting the school bus out of the intersection. There's sun glare. I'm sure she didn't see the students, and there was a gap, and she probably went to make the turn at that point. Had we eliminated the turns out of the high school there, this is an accident that most likely never would have happened. It certainly wouldn't have happened the way that it happened, because that's, you know, specific to this particular accident. I'm not saying there isn't a speed problem on Corey Road, but it's not related to this accident. You would agree with that, wouldn't you?
Yes. If the traffic itself is all sent out the back entrance, the difference between what happens in the front of the school and what happens in the back of school is quite significant. We're looking at about 5 to 15 students that cross Corey Road. But if we send all the traffic out the back, we have about 105 cars that can park back there, and that gets filled up. So you're probably looking at least 105 kids that cross that back driveway to get into the school.
But you also don't have the same number of movements. You don't have people making a left, a right, a left, people passing on the outside. You have basically at that point, if you're controlling traffic flow, you have one direction of traffic. These kids are, you know, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years of age. And certainly if the traffic is coming from one direction, it's a lot safer than an intersection where kids have to cross, where, you know, there are 10 or 12 different movements.
Right. They would be dealing with two-way traffic as opposed to a four-way intersection.
For everybody that lives up there, you also know that there's a little bit of a blind. It's a pretty substantial blind curve when you come down that hill and you start bearing to the right. You know, down at Flanders Neckong Road, it's difficult to see. So traffic coming up there is an issue. One of the suggestions we had was, and that's where I lost my train of thought earlier, was that the school buses during that 6:45 to 7:05, there's a school bus in that intersection almost the entire time, usually one coming from each direction. Where that could help us is if we have some training with the school bus drivers and we teach our kids that are crossing at that intersection that when the school buses approach, they see a kid standing at the corner, they stop, they put their lights on both ways. The school bus coming up the hill, the school bus coming the other way, they put their lights on, they cross the kids, the school bus drivers themselves, and let them in. But all these things, like, I think they're all valid points. I think Dr. Reynolds has a valid point with the crosswalk in the back, as do you, Rob, and I think there's some experimentation to it. And I just think we have to try it, try the traffic flow, you know, try the striping on the ground, try the channelization, try the traffic flow, and try the cooperation with the school bus drivers, and see if that eliminates the problem. We began with saying that it's not a dangerous intersection, but it's a busy intersection. And then I can see you looking back saying, what do you mean it's not dangerous? 2 kids went to the hospital with serious injuries. That's absolutely true. But we think that we can manage it this way, and it is the way to do it. So that's kind of where we are.
Mr. Nicastro?
Yeah, I just had a question. I like the idea of and I was down there with you guys when we looked at that. I like the idea of narrowing it because I think it will help a lot from the passing point. Was anything discussed about a no left turn out of the high school?
That's kind of what we're doing with the traffic flow in. Frankly, out the back, it looks to me like the school design was designed originally to have enough room to turn in that front entrance with buses. The back entrance, I'm not so sure how it's going to work yet, so that the back entrance is it's more narrow than the front entrance, as there are only 2 lanes, and out in the front there are 3 lanes. So if you can get the original thought was to have the parental, the drop-off, parents dropping off their children, come in from the front and go out through the back. If you're going to make a right, you would have to go out the way you're making a right. So if you're coming out onto Corey Road and you're making a right, that would be acceptable. If you're making a left, it would not be acceptable. And the same thing out the back. It's not an easy thing to do. It is something that it's behavior change, and you can see that just by putting the speed limit signs up, people don't listen to speed limit signs. And you put up signs, they don't listen to it unless you do the whole thing. You do the education, we do the enforcement. The way we do enforcement is it's a matter of resource. If we've identified now that Corey Road is certainly having a problem right now, so we have to put some enforcement up there. We typically put it up there until the time when we see a behavior change, and then we go put it where it's being called for somewhere else. Then we'll get a call back from people in the neighborhood saying they're speeding here, and then we'll come back and do that. So that's kind of how we do it.
Mr. Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief's got the striping and the signs and the crosswalk timing. I mean, is this a staged approach? Like this is first step, you want to do this? And if so,
how quickly can we make this happen? It's kind of depending on the funding. And the funding, we don't have the complete answer for. Scott's been doing some research on that, on how much it costs to do that. But it's when the funding gets there, and then we go out and we see who we can have do the project. But
Chief, I'm pretty sure I speak for the council and the mayor that I don't think funding is going to be an issue if it's a matter of safety of students.
Yeah, but it's thousands of dollars. And I can let Scott speak to that. But that's it's kind of when it gets there. I don't control that aspect of it. So
small rollers and a weekend crew, right?
It's not that easy.
Mr. Mania?
If we save one life, no matter what the cost is, it's well worth it.
I completely agree. We're in a life-saving business.
We have a contractor that is going to be visiting with us either by the end of this week or early next week to actually go over the exact measurements and come up with a final cost.
I have two questions. I don't understand why we have the different speed limits on Corey Road. Why isn't it just 25 the whole way? It's a residential street. That's bothered me for a very long time.
I mean, I can throw that back at you. We don't make the speed limits. The speed limits are made here, and they're made just like what happened here today. There are people that see that there's an issue, and they come to a meeting and they say, I would like the speed limit to be 25, and then you'll see them come back and they, no, that's too slow. We'd like it to be something else. So historically, I can't tell you who put that speed limit there. Well, I can tell you that naturally, I drive down that road. I tend to be I drive like Miss Daisy. I'm an old
Okay, Mario, what are you saying to us? You drag racing?
I'm a guy that can get away with speeding, but I'm a right lane driver most of the time. I drive slowly, but Corey Road tends to pull you in, especially by coming from Flanders, from the Tintz Road side. You want to go faster there because it's a wider street. It's a nice smooth road. It's developed. It was developed in such a way that you naturally drive faster there. When you get down to the other end, you tend to slow down. It's because the road narrows a little bit, and it's harder to drive fast when it's a narrow road. That's kind of the purpose of putting the lines on to make the road narrow. When it's a smaller thing, you tend to drive slower. It's just like getting into a small parking spot up at the Walmart.
Well, then
slower.
If the speed limit's up to the council, I think that
it doesn't hurt my feelings if it's 25 the whole way.
That's what that's what I think it should be.
It's a council issue. Just
yep.
Change the speed
then we're changing the speed limit to 25.
And then it becomes then it's back to us, and to make people do 25. We're going to have to be there a lot, and we will get people to do 25 miles an hour, and then we'll go away, and they'll go back to doing 40 miles an hour. But
now
that's what we do.
My next part of my question, when you're talking about these yellow lines here, in the median, it's going to go the full length of Corey. No. Okay, that's the next question I have.
If you look at those, do you have the thing?
Yeah, I have it right here.
If you look, there's the one there. You can see the off-road there.
Right. So when it gets to Schoolhouse, it stops. Well, then my next question, in order to make just let me finish my thought because I'm 55 now and I forget things. Anyway, I forgot things before then too. Notice there's no shoulder lines on Corey Road. And that's why it makes the road seem really large. Wouldn't putting shoulder lines when you come in from Flanders Drakestown Road help to narrow and people understand that this is their speed instead of doing the center median all the way down? It's just a suggestion. It might help.
I mean, the smaller, I don't know if you're nodding around behind me, but the smaller you make a road, the slower they'll go. But
right, that's my thoughts.
By the way, Scott is a traffic expert.
Yes, he is.
So
that's.
Let's listen to Scott.
The shoulder lines generally are not placed on roadways that have curbing.
Right.
And that's why they're not there. And we actually put the shoulder line on the north side.
But where Colleen's talking about, there is curbing up at the top.
Right. The curbing is the whole way.
The whole way, yeah.
And the only exception on Corey Road that we have a shoulder line is from Flanders Neckon Road up to the school entrance.
Mm-hmm.
It was to, again, narrow the road.
Narrow the road.
Those who walk a space to walk on the side of the road delineated from the travel lane because there's no sidewalk.
Okay, so we're going to look into I don't know if that could be a solution to helping to slow people down a little bit more.
We don't want to make it an artist's palette either.
Right, exactly. That's why I'm just thinking a shoulder line would be very simple to show people, but you are the expert, and
We can
I always
discuss that
defer.
with, the
Yeah,
Director of
I'm pretty
Public
sure we'll
Works.
leave the coming up with the lines and the colors
Right.
to
And
our experts.
one last thing that I had was a lot of towns you'll see where they have the speed monitor things that are now done by solar power, and they're like on a pole or something. I would think that sometimes that visual. I was talking to Mr. Kenning about this earlier today, and Mayor Greenbaum last week. And as I understand it, they can actually be moved around. They're not like they're there when you put them there. But if you need them in another location, you can do that as well. And I think that would be money well spent, because I think every single one of us, when you see those, you slow down.
Yeah, you should take a look at Ryder Road in Roxbury.
Seen it.
You know where I'm talking about?
I will get I'll get the prices for those.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's the end of my suggestions.
Solar-powered radar gun.
Is there anybody else from council that has any questions?
Detector goes off and everybody slows down.
Is there anyone from the public that wants to be heard? Please step up to the podium. Name and address for the record, please.
Jordan Siegel, 42 Corey Road. A few days ago, I submitted a letter to the entire council. Just so you guys know, I am employed by the state police for 7 years now. I've been stationed all over North Jersey, including all major interstates, so I do have a very good experience and expertise regarding traffic, and I've seen all the tragic incidences occur, resulting in unfortunate fatalities and non-fatalities. Letter I submitted was, I'm a resident of Mount Olive Township living at 42 Corey Road. I would like to attend the upcoming public council meeting and enter into the record a request to reduce commercial traffic and installation of asphalt speed tables on Corey Road. Just before I go any further, I personally think that the problem ultimately is complacency, and we can't teach complacency, unfortunately, so we have to develop other means to eliminate the complacency, and I think the complacency starts at an entire other level. I do respect everything going on with what's going on with the school incident, but I think this could have been avoided years ago, preventing anything that builds up. Everything that's going on Corey Road, the way I observe it, is compounding from one thing onto the next. And I'll continue with my... Corey Road is not a main road, nor is it a county road. The road is entirely residential with an exception of high school, and is merely a side street. I heard from residents that Corey Road is so busy because it is a cut-through road. With this mentality embedded in the minds of motorists, the temptation and opportunity to speed down the road is imminent in order to make it a worthwhile cut-through. It's not a good cut-through if you can't fly down it. I mean, let's be honest about that. Considering the fact that Corey Road consists of a partial school zone, there should be drastically reduced speed limits as well. I watch neighbors as they panic to reach into their mailboxes in fear of being struck by foreign, non-residential cut-through traffic. The speeds people travel at down Corey Road are egregious and entirely too fast. It has always been fact in history that nothing changes until someone dies as a result of negligence on behalf of the state, county, or municipality. I could use as an example, and I hate to go here, but I personally had an involvement with it. Police officer Joe Wargo in Mount Arlington Township, who died last year on Route 80. I personally responded to that accident in the middle of the night on Route 80. The history on Route 80, there's been a lot of head-on collisions in that area because there was no guardrail in between the east and the westbound traffic. Those accidents, a few years ago, there was a Jeep Wrangler, I believe, that crossed over the highway and involved two separate accidents, killing, I believe, 2 people. Beyond that, there's a lot of people that fall asleep early hours of the morning. They cross over, hit people head-on, and create pretty big catastrophe accidents. Fortunately, nothing bad has happened. Unfortunately, one night, a police officer was traveling eastbound on Route 80, and a motorist who was under the influence of drugs crossed over the westbound lanes at approximately 100 miles an hour into the eastbound traffic and hit Officer Wargo head-on. Lo and behold, months later, 4 miles of brand new guardrail have been installed. I'm sure everyone's seen the shiny stainless steel. Well, it's not stainless steel, but the galvanized guardrail that's on that highway now. There's entirely too much commercial truck traffic on this road, as it creates an excessive level of noise and also poses a danger as they are also traveling at egregious speeds. The commercial traffic should be banned from using this road as a cut-through and plan an alternate route. I would wonder how so much traffic, commercial traffic, trucks, tractor trailers, full semis have developed and compounded, use that word again, to get to that point where they use Quarry Road basically as their highway. The other day I was sitting in my room and I heard a tractor trailer probably get up to its 7th gear, which, I mean, on Quarry Road in a tractor trailer, it's pretty fast. If I sat my driveway with a laser and clocked the speeds, I wouldn't be surprised, and I'd hate to tell you, but I'm sure every person drives down that road at 50 miles an hour. If I sat there with the laser and did that, I'd be culpably inefficient and lose my job for not enforcing all those violations. Is it my job to do that? No, I don't want to step on the Township of Mount Olive Police Department's toes, so I'll allow them to take care of that. There is a solution to the problem, but we all know politics play a tremendous role in decision-making in governmental agencies, and this must be handled delicately. Option A is the easiest option. Have Mount Olive Township Police Department strictly enforce the speed limit that is currently put in place, which is too high to begin with, and generate surplus revenue. I mean, in the 7 years I've been a trooper, I've probably written thousands of tickets, and 7 years later, I'm still writing the same thousands of tickets. So, I mean, you could see where we're going with that. Does the tickets really do much? I don't know. The fines, I personally believe, are not high enough because there's just no fear. I think that the people are so complacent that they feel that the risk outweighs the penalty. Hey, if I get a ticket once a year, you know, if it means every other day I can get away with it, why not? Police enforcement creates animosity between the residents and the municipal government because, let's face it, majority of residents will not conform to the new speed limit on their own intuition, and nobody is happy when they receive a ticket, especially at points. Also, the motorists that receive the tickets will not see a cutback from the revenue generated as a result of the high fines they have to pay. This is a lose-lose scenario for the residents and the politicians. I mean, you can have the police department go out and hammer everybody is the term we use at work, loosely. But at some point, you're just going to be writing tickets to all the residents on that street or in the streets nearby, and that just, you know, we don't really want to do that in the town. We want everybody to like us. Because again, when they call us, we have to go there to help them, and we want them to be on our side. Option B is spend a few thousand of the taxpayers' dollars that are already accrued, probably, to install asphalt speed tables that will span the width of the roadway and be clearly marked with advanced warning signage in place. The expeditious completion of the project can serve as a benchmark for Mount Olive Township to conduct traffic studies in other parts of the township that also have residential roads being used as high-speed cut-throughs. I add another note, effect on politics from option B. Township residents are happy and feel safe. They know that young children can safely play in front of the yard or driveway with their house and safely learn how to ride a bicycle in the street, which is, I know that's how I learned how to ride a bike, is in the street, not my driveway. Since the township has neglected taking any measures against that, I think now would be the time to do so. Unfortunately, you know, it takes something like this to happen, but, you know, let's prevent anything worse. I know speed is not the cause of the accident for the bus, but, I mean, how much longer are we going to wait for speed to be the cause of the next accident? That's my big issue with this whole thing. Let's see what. A one-time low-cost project like this would be easily backed up by opinions of the residents and taxpayers. Residents will know the township is concerned with their safety and security. Security extends so much deeper than just a police officer patrolling his or her patrol vehicle. We must police ourselves too. And what I think about the speed tables is, obviously, somebody said before, if they're not high enough, they don't really do anything. You know, if they're so high, then people really actually have to slow down. If you're going to be a police officer and go out there and enforce all the speeding violations on a road without speeding tables, we could sit there all day and write tickets all day long. But if you put the speed tables, I think the people that still blow over those speed tables and cause that but noise, those are the people that deserve the ticket. Those are the people that have absolutely no regard for anyone else's safety. They're selfish and they just don't care. And that's the person that's well deserving of the ticket that the police officer would be glad to write. That's my letter, and I'm glad I have the opportunity to come up and speak to you guys. Thank you.
Mr. Siegel, I have a couple questions. You had said that you hear the traffic going down Quarry Road excessively on numerous times, and you said in your capacity you don't want to put a laser out. But as a resident, did you call to complain about the road?
This is now the first time.
And how long have you lived on Quarry Road?
3 months.
Oh, okay. I was under the impression you lived there years.
Well, I've spoken to everyone that has lived there for 25, 26 years, and I mean, coming from any other town to something like this, just having the experience that I have, seeing what's right and what's wrong, this slaps me right in the face that this is not right.
Yeah, because, I mean, granted, I don't live on Quarry Road, but I don't, correct me if I know any other residents there, I'm not aware of that much commercial traffic on there.
There is.
And that, and if it isn't, then that's definitely something that we should, be addressing. Because
I mean, it's trucks all day long, dump trucks, semis, dumpster trucks, garbage haulers, landscapers. And they're just flying full speed straight up the road because it's a cut through. And when you're going towards the Tintz Road side, you see basically the light at the end of the tunnel, for lack of better words, and you just open up the gas and got to get there to the end.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree that there is most likely a speed problem on Quarry Road. I've heard it for years. I've heard it, like I said, on Clover Hill Drive, on Connolly Avenue. We have speed problems on any road that's got a lot of traffic on it. People drive too fast to residential neighborhoods, and it's definitely a problem that needs to be addressed. But the issue that we looked at here was this specific accident, and how do we cross the kids safely from one side of Quarry Road to the other side of Quarry Road. And certainly a portion of that perspective is speed, and it needs to be addressed, whether it's through the striping, the lowering of the speed limits on the road. I think it's a great step to take the kids from the south side of that intersection and move them over, from the north side and move them over to the south side, because now even without eliminating turns, you've taken anybody who's coming out of the high school and making the left turn directly into the sun. The kids are already going to be on the other side of the intersection. So when I asked Mark and Scott to look at this issue, it was, how did the accident occur? What do we need to do to make it safer for the kids to cross? And so, we can sit here and debate speed tables on any number of different roads. We can sit here and debate whether or not we want to limit traffic. Remember, when you put speed tables out on a particular road, you saw what happened at Sunset, you start getting the traffic speeding through other parts of the neighborhoods. See, what you're really doing is moving a problem from one spot to another spot, and maybe even a spot which is less favorable to deal with. Here, enforcement should be relatively easy because of its location. And I understand exactly what Chief Spitzer and Sergeant Van Ness said. You can put enforcement out there. It only lasts as long as the people's memory. It's good for a month, and then everyone returns to their old driving habits. There has to be a fundamental change on this road. And the fundamental change which is being set forth right now by the police department is their plan that they have here. Speed bumps are a different issue. It wouldn't have prevented this accident.
And Mr. Mayor, I agree 100% with you that, it looks like we have two separate issues to address. And obviously, if we're trying to address this accident and, prevent any future occurrence, the recommendation by the chief and Scott Van Ness seems to be definitely a step forward in that direction, and the overall speed on Quarry Road is definitely an issue that should be revisited in the near future. Yes, up to the podium, please. Thank you, Mr. Siegel.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Name and address for the record, please.
Maureen Mitru. I live at 44 Quarry Road. I have children who live on the lower portion of Corey Road. And if we're going to talk about the high school traffic and the high school bus situation, in general, the way that the sidewalks were built, there's only sidewalks on one side of Corey Road. So my children who are coming from that Tintz Road side of Corey Road have to cross the street from our house, walk up the street, cross back over exactly at the point of high speed on Corey Road. Another issue is a great deal of the high-speed traffic is caused by the school buses themselves. Either racing up the street, back down the street empty, while there are younger children standing there at the school, at their bus stops for elementary school or for the middle school, or racing up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to get there on time to be able to pick up the kids. So if we're going to look at Corey Road and that whole intersection, I think you need to look at it holistically. And while I'm in complete agreement that the accident that hurt the girls was not directly related to speed, there are more issues to the high school traffic patterns than simply that one accident.
I don't disagree with you. Agree wholeheartedly. And you can take it out to Flanders Neck Kong Road as well, where the kids are crossing from Carlton, and you can take it out. You can take it out almost endlessly in Mount Olive. Unfortunately, the way that the town developed without sidewalks, it's a very dangerous situation generally for the kids in Mount Olive. And I agree. You have to look at it holistically throughout the entirety of the area. It's not just Corey Road. It's as I said, it's Flanders Neck Kong Road as well.
Agreed.
And other areas, maybe even Flanders Road, you know, the kids crossing from Marlin Terrace and from the other streets in Gold Mine Estates.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Can I just respond quick just to
Yes,
the
Chief.
one thing? The idea that enforcement doesn't work is it's not true. Enforcement works. We will continue to have motor vehicle enforcement. The way we know that there's a problem is from you. And the way that I work, and I think I get back to everybody that emails me or calls me, but if you call me and say, Corey Road, we're having a problem right now, and there's speeders, I promise you that I will send it to the traffic department, and I will send it to the patrol division, and they put it on what's called directed patrol. That means that they get there, every officer that goes out and works that area gets there as often as they can during their shift. And their lieutenant, who's a stickler for statistics, says, how many times did you do your directed patrol? And the police officers will go there. It's my fault if they don't go there, but if I don't know that has to happen, I'm telling you, I'm promising you that if you call me and send me something, I will get back to you and I'll make some action happen. It may not solve the whole problem, but enforcement is certainly important. It's one of the three factors, and we have to enforce the laws.
Sean, is this something that could be addressed through our iWorks system?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
From iWorks, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
anytime we get a complaint from the community, the vast majority does deal with public works or parks or potholes, but on occasion we do get police concerns and they're forwarded immediately to Chief Spitzer and his staff, and he's very prompt in
I think this is something that we should at least either send out on either on a Facebook feed or a Twitter feed, or at least some kind of advertising that if residents don't want to call up and pick up the phone and leave a message or talk to it, they can just simply just go on the internet, put it on the iWorks, and that way at least we can, track electronically where the complaints are coming from. Ms. Labow?
I just want to say, a lot of people, if you don't know what iWorks is, it's a little bit confusing, and maybe we could ask Mr. Shawnee, could you just give us a quick description for?
Yeah, it's report a problem. It's right on the website. I believe it does say report
It's
a
right.
problem, and it's comprehensive for anything the.
If you go on the website and the main Mount Olive Township website, on the left-hand side, there's a little box, the second one down, it says iWorks. You click on that link, and another window will open up, and it tells you what is the issue, and you can have a drop-down window, says which department. Mr. Canning gets a copy of it, the department head gets a copy of it, you get results, a response within 2 days, I believe.
3 business days.
3 business days. And it's like a work order, and it stays open until the issue is resolved, and it's a really nice way to track, and actually it's really good for this situation because we can actually have better statistics for the complaints that are coming in. So it's a great tool to use. If you don't have a computer, you're not familiar with that, you can call, and Mr. Canning, Chief Spitzer, anyone could put it into the system for you. So it's a wonderful program that our new administration just brought in, and it's working well.
Mr. Nicastro?
Yeah, I know we're going to look into all the speed limits and all the stuff that we talked about, which is a great idea too, but are we going to address also the commercial concern? Can we do something about that? That seems to be something, I don't know what the procedure is, but that would be something that I think could be done relatively quickly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're not going to be able to take any action tonight on it. I would want at least a feedback onto, the recommendation from the police department and Sergeant Van Ness regarding his recommendation as far as what he thinks on the commercial aspect of it. Mr. Mayor.
I agree, but it's something that has to be studied, because where are you pushing the traffic if you take it somewhere else? Now you're pushing it onto Teresa to come back around. It needs to be addressed.
Studied,
yeah.
There's one more thing.
Mr. Walsh.
Thank you. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in here. I would actually love to see a speed bump study done throughout the town. Because I hear from a number of residents, as the mayor stated, and many people have stated here tonight, there's speeding problems all over. And I personally believe, as I believe the state policeman said, speed bumps are the only real way to solve the problem. I realize that you can't put them everywhere, and not everybody likes them. But I think if you but the police can't be sitting there every day and on every street, and if you do it on one street, it's going to go into another. I would love to see a study done on the whole township. A lot of the streets that are catching more traffic than they should, or people are going faster than they should, and look at, and even putting a referendum saying, look, it's going to cost us $100,000 or $200,000, whatever, to do it. Put it on a ballot. Say, hey, do you want to go ahead and make it, a more kid-friendly town and lower speeding, a town with less speeding problems, or do you want to leave it the way it is? Because everything affects everything else. So, just wanted to throw that out there.
I have a question for the chief.
Yes, Ms. Labelle.
Chief Spitzer, I noticed in Netcon this past weekend they have a sign up at 46 to Main Street and 206 that says no truck traffic allowed. I'm not sure if that's a temporary, if that's their new. Is that a possibility?
I think it's just completely temporary in relation to that project, that road project they have going on.
So could we? I mean, I understand it's unreal.
Stop truck traffic on 206 or 46.
No. I mean, for Corey Road, is it possible to put up a sign and just say we're no truck, dump trucks, that type of thing, or
that's not something I'm prepared to answer right now.
Okay. But we'll consider it.
But what the trooper said is true, that road is used for. It's used for commercial traffic. It's ever since the invention of the Garmin, we just drive along and we're on Route 46 or we're on Route 206 and we're going to work and we try to find the shortcut, and the main roads is what you use the main roads, and there are some trucks that have to be there for deliveries,
right.
But these are mostly cut through. Probably people coming up River Road from Flanders and then cutting across Flanders Drakestown and going that way, or vice versa, coming up Flanders Netcon and using it to get to River Road or get to that other side of town. But Tintz Road has been a huge problem for years with that, with cut-through traffic. As soon as we saw Garmin's, we started seeing the back roads traffic, and it's a constant problem. But that's not something, I'm just not prepared.
Yeah.
I don't have the answers for you right now. But
just a question if we can do that.
Is there anybody else from the public? Please step up to the podium. Mr. Ireland.
Scott Ireland, Eric Court in that development. A couple of things. Number one, I'd just like to thank the council and the due diligence that I'm seeing done, on this topic. Number two, as having the dubious distinction of probably being the only person in the room who's been pulled over by a certain officer on Corey Road and given a stern warning. Yeah, there's two separate issues, obviously, the speeding and the intersection. And I hope, well, one thing I didn't hear, and one of the two things I'd like to point out, what I didn't hear and what I'd like to have some comment on is a timeline. When these are all, there's a lot of good ideas, some not so good ideas maybe being thrown out. I'd kind of like to know a timeline of when this comes to, fruition, and when these things can be, whatever's going to be implemented, when.
Well, obviously the school year is coming to an end. We looked at immediately getting in the crosswalk, but because of the weather and other factors, the crosswalk hasn't been put in. Isn't that correct, Chief, at this point?
Yeah, and just finding who's going to do it, and the funding for it and all that, but it's as fast as we can get it done.
Certainly by the beginning of the next school year in September, we will have a whatever solution we decide upon will be put in place.
Okay. Two comments. One, I didn't see it mentioned prominently. Somebody did mention it though. I'd be a huge fan, especially if the glare's on the left turn from the rising sun. I'd be a huge fan of no left turn coming out, if that's a
certainly been raised and will be considered by the police department in the solution, and that may be the way ultimately. But again, you have to take a look at how the traffic flow and the buses
holistically. I like the
yes,
term.
but
Right.
Certainly, I'm sure Mark took notice of that, and they'll consider that in whatever they recommend as the solution.
And lastly, there was a lot of comments of what is possible, going in and out of the school. And I know we have the district leaders here. I was wondering if they were going to comment on anything that's going to happen on their grounds.
Just real quick, the no left turn, I agree with it, but I don't agree with no left turn all the time. It's
Right.
during the sun. It's during drop-off time, because there's everybody here has probably had a high school student, so it's you're in and out of there all the time. So it's just during those key times, I think. That's the first.
I agree.
Chief, I just want to make sure that during the planning and implementation, all the suggestions, that we are in constant communication with the Board of Ed, and at least the school administration.
Yeah, we talked early on, and I think that the Board of Ed is kind of following our lead on some of the traffic issues, but they're certainly as concerned as we are, and we're doing that. I keep saying funding, and I know Rob has been very clear to say that funding is not an issue here. I get that. It's just the mechanics of the funding that I'm talking about. Right. How we make it happen, and it's progress is unfortunately Scott is retiring this summer, so we have another traffic person coming in, but I'm sure that he's going to be reachable, and he's going to be helping me along with the new traffic sergeant. But we're moving as quickly as we can on it, and we do feel like we have a bit of a reprieve over the summer, but the summer's going to go like that. So.
Right. Mr. Mania, then Mr. Perkins.
I guess this question is not for you, Chief. Someone from the school board. What kind of a visor does a school bus have? Something like a commercial bus to prevent that glare?
I'll let Scott, but the police officer got in this case, the police officer got in the seat where the bus driver was. The visor was down, and the school bus driver had sunglasses on as well. So, but they do have the big visor, the big school bus visor. They used to have the big mirror, remember, all the way across so they could watch us?
Mr. Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, I just wanted to clarify from my standpoint, when we talk about a funding issue, and as the mayor has said, funding at this point is not an issue, and there's other places within the budget that small, to me, the small amount of money could be taken from. We all know 28 days to break in a new habit, and the reprieve of the summer, and as you've eloquently said, it goes by just like that. I'd like to know that we could get this thing done rather rapidly, at least the striping, to kind of get the traveling public used to this during the summer months, so that when school does come into effect in September, it's not just, well, you know what, the end of August was a really good time because we were able to get funding and everything was nice and slow. Well, guess what? Now they've only got 2 weeks to adjust to it. If we can, if that's going to be, and I think this is a great solution that your department's come up with, and I'm sure the mayor is in approval with this. I'd like to see this moving as quickly as humanly possible.
It's the best time to do the work, too, when school is not in and we start over with... The other thing is with education is there are new drivers every year there, and they're the most inexperienced drivers. So every year we have to educate another group of seniors and some juniors.
I just want them to get used to this, Chief, if they can. Give them the months of July and August to get used to this before school opens again in September.
Can you, hold on, Mr. Giordano.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to respond to Mr. Ireland.
Name and address for the record, please.
Oh, sorry, Anthony Giordano, 49 Crenshaw Drive, Board of Education President. Just want to respond to Mr. Ireland. We have been in constant contact with Mayor Greenbaum, Mr. Canning, the Chief, Mr. Van Ness, Mr. Quinn. The minute the accident happened, Dr. Reynolds and I came to council to the mayor's office, set up an appointment with him and Mr. Canning. We were able to get together, myself on a voice conference to talk about some solutions, some ideas. Our board business committee, Dr. Reynolds presented them with some of the solutions that the chief and Officer Van Ness and the committee had had come up with. We are in constant communication. It is, in my opinion, a traffic flow issue, so which means the township would be involved. The board does have concerns with, like Dr. Reynolds said and the chief said, with putting more traffic going through into the back. We don't know how that would be addressed. We are talking to them. They are the traffic experts, but certainly we are in constant communication. And I'd like to thank the mayor, Mr. Canning, and the council and everyone involved for that.
And Mr. Giordano, when the plan is finally finalized, I would like to at least see an endorsement of the chief's plan. If you'd be so kind.
Oh, absolutely. I think the simple fact, Mr. President, that the Board of Ed and the mayor and the BA, since I've been on the Board of Ed and since I lived in town for 8 years, it's unprecedented that we've reached out and we're working in unison to try to solve this problem. You all have lived here longer than me. This has never happened before. It's always been at each other's neck, finger pointing. So certainly, they are the experts. We do have some concerns, like I said, with traffic coming through the back and the students who park in the back crossing. But certainly, one weighs out the other. So we'll come to an agreement that's best for the students.
Thank you, and I'm very pleased to see the cooperation. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Ann Scheingold. I'm at 39 Quarry Road, and I've been living on
Could you
Quarry...
speak louder? I can't hear you.
You can't hear me still? Can you hear me better now? Any better?
That's better.
Yeah.
Speak right on the microphone.
Okay. My name is Ann Scheingold. I live at 39 Quarry Road. I've been a resident for more than 26 years. I'm an original owner of the house when it was built. The speed limit on Quarry Road was 25 miles an hour, and several years later, I don't know why, it went up to 35, and when it was 25, people were doing 30 and 35, and now that it's 35, they're doing, well, I don't know, but much higher than the speed limit. And it's a matter of a quality of life for not only the school children, their safety, but the residents as well. And truck traffic and commercial vehicles are on that road, and I've seen signs in Randolph Township where it says no truck traffic allowed. It looks like the a circle with a truck on, with a line going through it with a truck sign, and perhaps that would help as well. I think everything should be done to try to control the amount of traffic, the speed of the traffic, and safety for the children and the residents. And perhaps, as you mentioned, the lit speed sign is a great idea. I don't think that lowering the speed limit is a tremendous cost. I mean, it's a few signs being put up, and I don't know what the procedure to do so is or the length of time, but perhaps that could be the first initial step.
I think everyone is in agreement to lower the speed limit to 25.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And I just found out earlier from Fred Samara, our attorney, it is, we do have to do it by ordinance. Okay. If we could have done it by resolution, we could have done it tonight. But ordinance is a two-step process. It'll be on the agenda for next meeting, first reading, and then second reading 2 weeks later. So hopefully within a month, as long as the rest of the council's in agreement, it'll be done.
Okay, well, thank you. I just wanted to voice my opinion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to jump on that speed limit. Before we go ahead and doing an ordinance to lower that speed limit on the road, I'd like an endorsement from the police department as such.
They gave it to us already.
All right, in writing.
Oh.
Is there anybody else from the audience? Mr. Jessica.
Thank you. So I mentioned I wanted to follow up a little bit after hearing everything. Took a couple of notes. One of the things that I think would be beneficial is, based on the diagram, it looks like the narrowing of the lanes is going to happen right as you're getting up to the crest of the hill by Schoolhouse Road.
It's a drawing. It's actually beyond the crest, beyond the schoolhouse, towards the entrance.
All right. Going closer to Flanders Neck Cone? Yes. Oh, really? Because I would propose bringing it back over the hill rather than having traffic get up over the hill and then get hit immediately with a slowdown.
We'll look at that as we get in.
Fair enough. I still think a crossing guard is a potential option if this doesn't work out. And I guess one of the things that I want to make sure of is that there is a plan to monitor the effectiveness of the situation. So, don't put them in, walk away. Let's make sure we get up there, take a look at what happens in September. I like the suggestion of getting the new restricted speeds in place early in August so the habits do change.
Dave, just so the record is clear, my cell phone number is on the website, and I take all phone calls from people who have concerns. So the people who live in that neighborhood have the best visibility in terms of what is happening at that intersection, and they can hesitate to contact me to revisit the issue if our solution needs to be tweaked or changed.
Fair enough. I think keeping at least a random police presence up there, if it's one day a week, a Monday one week, a Thursday the next week, everybody, if they think there might be a police officer in the area, even to the point of slowing down the traffic on the road, probably effective. Sure. We all know where the normal places are that they hang out. If people start considering Quarry Road as a normal place where an officer is going to be, I'm sure it'll affect habits.
Dave, I like that in connection with one of those speed radar signs that's permanently affixed there, because I know myself, when I see that sign and I'm approaching it and it starts blinking that I'm going too fast on a particular road, I slow down. So if you put that in conjunction with a police presence, I think you've probably accomplished what it is that you're looking to do, which is to slow the speed on that road.
Agreed. And then I guess the only other thing, two things really. One is do we have a date for the school's decision on are we going to modify the traffic coming in and out? Is that going to be done in conjunction with this remediation? I haven't heard how that decision is going to be made. And I'll let you come up and address it in a second. And then the only other thing is the Flanders Neckholm Road crossing, where there are the students coming over from Carlton. I haven't heard if there's any issues or plans to slow down traffic over there as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jessup. Mr. Giordano, you wish to address that?
Anthony Giordano, 49 Crenshaw Drive, Board of Education President. That should be done in conjunction with whatever the chief and the police department come up with Mr. Quinn. Certainly, if the recommendation is, and we bounced it around a little bit, just doing that right-hand turn coming out with all traffic between a certain period of time, certainly that would all fit into the master plan of everything. I don't think one is without the other, so it's all going to come down to what ultimately is decided on. Oh, we'll probably Honeywell it the same way. I think the chief explained it. We use our Honeywell system, the email system that we have, everything. Flyers would go home, mail, if we had, well, trying to cut down on paper, but Honeywell and our technology usage. Certainly in August when Mr. Stansbury sends things out to the seniors and the senior parents or the school kids fraternity, we do flyers. We can do flyers for the middle schoolers and elementary parents. We can inundate everybody to the point where they'll come back and complain to Dr. Reynolds that their cell phones and their emails are going off too much.
Ms. Laybow?
I just have a quick suggestion. Mayor Greenbaum can maybe think about this when we send out the tax bills in July, if this plan is up and ready at that time. If we included that documentation in with the tax bills, that would cover everybody who's not in the school system as well, so everybody would hopefully read it and know about it.
We already sent out the estimated bills, Colleen, for the third quarter, so we're not going to be sending out the final bill till probably August.
I would
that's
would have considered it as well, but you have to pick the right time and the right place to advertise your changes. And I think what's going to happen, I like what the school, first of all, every decision that is made here is going to be made in conjunction with the school so that we're all on the same page in terms of what we're doing and how we're trying to accomplish the goal of having a safer area around the high school. Secondly, at the time when school comes back into session, and I agree with Mr. Perkins that we need to do the striping as soon as possible so that people get used to the fact that we're slowing down the traffic on Quarry Road. The council should consider perhaps placing a weight limit on traffic that uses Quarry Road that is within the council's perspective, and if the council comes back and decides that they're going to limit the weight traffic on Quarry Road, that's certainly something that I would sign if it came to my desk. Secondly, at the point in time where school comes back into session, or shortly before the time that school comes back into session, we will have a police presence at the high school in terms of our educational process, so that for a period of time While people are getting used to whatever changes are being put in place, people will be directed at that point in time as to the changes.
I have one last suggestion.
Ms. Leyva, yes.
One last suggestion. Since we have our new video equipment, once we have the lines all painted, everything in place, maybe we should just take the show on the road, no pun intended, videotape it, put it on YouTube, put it on the website so people can get a nice little visual of it. You can star in the show, Mayor.
It's not a bad idea.
It's just a suggestion.
Besides the starring in the show, it's not a bad suggestion.
Is there anybody else in the public wishing to be heard on this issue? Okay, seeing none, we're going to jump ahead the agenda here. I'd like to go into the executive session to discuss the affordable housing issues. We're going to go into the other room. And Mr. McGuarty back in session. Our next item up for discussion is an appeal to a solicitor's ordinance. Is Mr. Jeff Feldstein present? Name and address for the record, please.
Jeff Feldstein. I'm the owner of Down to the Bone Barbecue in Byram, 172 Lackawanna Drive. Recently, we actually petitioned to see if we can get our concession trailer in front of Lowe's in International Drive, and through a third party who basically deals with all the Lowe's and Home Depots throughout the country, we were able to secure permission from Lowe's to put our trailer in front of Lowe's, providing we fit their requirements in terms of the amount of space, which we currently do. It was brought to my attention that we had to meet a couple of different ordinances when it comes to having a brick and mortar restaurant and a temporary vendor close to that location. We met the ordinance for the brick and mortar location. We're supposed to be originally 1,000 feet. We're over 1,100 square feet. The second ordinance was for a temporary vendor, which just happened to be on Gold Mine Road, which was 2,000 feet. We're under 2,000 feet. And when I went down to discuss it with you guys and go through all the permit requirements, they said that I was basically rejected because of that. In the interim, we got permission from the vendor that is actually selling the hot dogs, which, as you know, is a former mayor, and we got everything in line to make this happen. And I'm just basically coming to you guys to see if there was a possibility where we could change the ordinance so that we can reflect having Down to the Bone Barbecue selling our barbecue in the Lowe's parking lot.
Mr. Feldstein, you said that you got permission from the operators of Lowe's, but are you aware that you need permission from the owner of the property, and have you been able to obtain?
Well, I was just notified that about 4 or 5 hours ago. We're in the process of trying to find out who the owner is, and I left a bunch of messages, and nobody had gotten back to me since that time.
All right. And you also stated not only in your email, but also just now that you have gotten permission from, I'm assuming, the hot dog vendor?
Correct. We didn't get any. We got a verbal. We were in the process of getting a written authorization. I came here originally when I first came in to file for all the permits. Everything was all filed, ready to go. And then when I found out that we were a certain distance, I put everything on hold to wait to find out about getting permission and getting everything ready for you guys.
Just to give the rest of the council a little background, I guess the issue that you had was that you believe that you are in compliance based on traveling distance and not as the crow flies.
Correct.
So what he's looking for is us to give him a waiver on the requirement to be 2,000 feet from another vendor, food vendor. Were you able to obtain the hot dog operator's permission in writing?
Not yet. We're in the process of getting that.
I personally think that's immaterial. We have an ordinance. The hot dog vendor doesn't make our ordinance.
You're absolutely. I mean, being a business owner, I always like to at least extend the opportunity to give any small business the opportunity to, conduct business. And as such, I also don't like to see an established business be, for lack of a better phrase, trampled on where he believes, he's not being protected legally. So, I originally had an issue with, this application, just, for the variance, just, on that stipulation. But I don't even think this is something that we can even entertain unless we have at least written permission from the property owner and the other business establishment to which you be encroaching. A verbal agreement is not enough for me. Mr. Semrau?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, the ordinance has a purpose to it, and I don't recommend a waiver. You often hear about precedent, and I'm not as concerned about a precedent when there's not a good chance that something else could occur. But in this particular case, if that precedent is set and there is some type of waiver, which I don't really believe would be permissible, we would then trigger everywhere else in the township that opportunity for someone else to come in and say, I want a waiver too. And there's everywhere in the municipality that someone else has established themselves, there'd be an opportunity for a waiver. So I think we would be basically tearing up the ordinance by even attempting, a waiver, which I don't see that being permissible. So the only way this could change is if there's an ordinance change. And when you do that, you'd have to have some kind of rational basis, and you'd have to go back, you'd have to have your planner and zoning officer go back and make a determination if it would in fact be reasonable, because this has worked in the past, and this is the standard that everyone else has come in and made an application and set up their business with this understanding and these guidelines. So it's very difficult to say at this point in time that you can, a waiver is going to create a number of implications to every other peddler, and an ordinance change would essentially do the same thing, because you're going to ask everyone now to play or to conduct their business with different guidelines. And yet, with that being said, it doesn't mean you can't do business in Mount Olive. It just says you really need to find a different location. That's the way I would look at it from a legal perspective.
Mr. Mania?
Alex, I don't want to give this gentleman false hopes, saying when you said if he gets permission from the property owner, we could entertain it. I'm not in favor of this, so I don't want to give him false hopes that if he does get permission from the property owner and comes back and hopes to get an approval, I just don't want to give him false hopes.
Ms. Labow?
I think Mr. Perkins was ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ladies first.
Oh, thank you.
What a guy.
I agree with Mr. Mania, and I'm sorry, but the ordinance is written as such for very specific reasons, and I would not be in favor of waiving that restriction, those guidelines right now. The other thing I'm concerned about, and I unfortunately didn't have a chance to read my email this afternoon, is there is another pad available there, and I don't know if another food vendor wants to come in, or a restaurant, and Catherine's going to answer the question. I don't know if that even stops that problem, but the main point is, I agree with Fred in that I don't think we should be waiving what we have and setting a precedence, which does create issues all throughout the township.
That pad site is by Chili's.
Oh, it's on the other side? Okay.
It's on the other side by Chili's and Macaroni Grill. I do want to add one other thing. We don't know exactly where in the parking lot he is proposing to put his concession stand, and there could be an issue with Panera.
Right.
I did some mappings on the Highlands mapping, and from the hot dog vendor to some point in the proposed parking lot, it's about 850 feet. Okay, but depending on where he is proposing to situate his stand.
Speak into the microphone.
Sorry. Depending on where he is proposing to situate the stand within the parking lot, he could be within the 1,000 feet to Panera as well. So we don't have any site plan from him showing what section of the parking lot. So that could be another issue down the line.
Mr. Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess that quasi answers part of my question. Like, I'm not quite sure how far away, I mean, quite frankly, personally, I think the ordinance does a disservice more than it does the service. Because a brick and mortar that's paying this township tax ratables only gets 1,000 feet. But somebody who runs up with a cart and sells hamburgers gets a 2,000 feet separation. So it seems like the folks that are paying the taxes are really getting the shaft more than the guys that aren't paying the taxes. So unlike my colleagues, I'd be in favor of not giving you an exemption, but changing the ordinance. Why shouldn't it be 1,000 feet for everybody? If it's 1,000 feet for brick and mortar, why wouldn't it be 1,000 feet for carts? I don't think it's going to be downtown, like outside Madison Square Garden, where we're going to have all these carts popping up and down the street. So, I mean, I really need to know, as Mrs. Navalu said, where you're putting it, where's it going to go, how does it impact my tax ratables that are coming in, how does it affect Panera Bread? I don't want those folks to be hurt, and not that I don't want you to make money, but I don't want you to be hurt. But I want to protect the brick and mortar folks more so than I want to protect you guys. And if you guys come to an agreement, if the hot dog guy says, well, you know what, it's 200 feet, and he looks and there's a pad down 200 feet, and that property owner has a pad that meets all the requirements, and he can go down another 200 feet, and guess what, that makes you 2,000, then life is golden. I just think the 2,000 foot is restrictive. I think is discriminatory against the brick and mortar folks, because you could be 1,000 feet within Panera.
Right.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes. First of all, your name again? I'm sorry.
Jeff Feldstein.
Feldstein, Mr. Feldstein. I just want to say what everybody else. I know they're thinking it, but they haven't said it. I, for one, Mr. Feldstein, want to thank you for considering doing business in Mount Olive. We are a business-friendly town, and I sincerely appreciate you wanting to do business here, and we would love you too. But our attorney brought up a really important point, and it's nothing personal. But if we change the ordinance or allow an exemption, I mean, I actually know somebody personally who would love to put a cart in that area, not the Lowe's area, but up in that area. And I say, look, I can't help you with that. It would look like something underhanded was going on. And if we decided, I mean, to put it bluntly, okay, we're going to let this guy do something, like literally it could look like we're doing something fishy. Like, okay, this guy paid us off. And, I'm not saying anything like that is happening or would, or it just looks really bad. And you can't go changing ordinance. And that our attorney mentioned that people have made business decisions based on these ordinances. They really have. And so it's not just as simple as trying not to let you have it. There's a huge holistic, seems to be the word of the day, picture going on here. But most importantly, I hope you can find a place. I hope you're able to do business here in Mount Olive. I'm sure your product is wonderful. So hopefully something will work out. But I just want you to know.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a question, and I'm not sure, Catherine or somebody from the administration, how many transient businesses do we have?
I'm going to say 3 or 4.
3 or 4. Located approximately?
There's one that's at Flanders Park, that's through the Township Rec Department. There's a food truck, Avi Ghibli.
He drives around, though,
There
right?
might be one more. We don't have a lot. But a food truck, the ice cream truck.
There's also one in the trade zone, hot dog vendor in the trade zone.
Yes.
Right off International Drive.
The vendors on Gold Mine Road.
Pardon?
That hot dog vendor's on Gold Mine Road.
No, there's another one on International Drive. In the trade zone.
Yeah, he's unfortunately he's not there anymore.
He left. He was there last week.
I mean, I think the point that I'm trying to make is at least 2 of them are mobile that go from location to location. The old, I hate the acronym, but the Roach Coach and the ice cream guy. They go around to different places. They'll pull here in the backyard if somebody's working, and they'll sell their wares. You're talking about setting up just like the hot dog is. You come to the same spot every day and you're set up there. You're not going from place to place. So when we look at the township, there's not that many here. So when you look at the ordinance, the way the ordinance is written, it says for the guy, and I agree with you, Pat, business friendly, for the guy who comes and pays the rent and pays the lease that comes into our finance department in the form of taxes, we tell him if another guy wants to put something up, he has to stay 1,000 feet away from your store. But if somebody comes up and puts a shopping cart down and sells pretzels off of it, and another guy wants to come in and sell bag pretzels, he's got to be 2,000 feet away. And that, to me, that just doesn't make good business sense. You're not protecting the people that are paying the rateables here.
Right. I think the purpose for temporary to be at least twice the distance is actually to protect the brick and mortar guy, because, you know, the guy who's going to put up a brick and mortar is going to shell out a tremendous amount of expense. He's going to risk a lot of capital. The guy with the temporary, the mobile, he does not need to risk that much. So it's actually in order to protect the brick and mortar location from having competition that does not need to risk as much capital and pushes them out. That's what I believe the intent of the 2,000 foot for a temporary, because they don't need to risk that much capital, and as such, let me protect the guys that do pay the property taxes. And if you want to compete, with the established brick and mortar outfits, yeah, we'll let you in within 1,000 feet, but you're risking capital, and you're going to make, your decisions based on whether you'll get a return on your investment, not the less return on a guy who just can move it. If business is slow, he can just pick up and leave.
And Mr. President, I agree, and I agree with you, but that's not the way paragraph C under 180-17 is written. What it says, and I'll quote it, is not more than one temporary merchant per lot will be permitted, and that's fine. But it says temporary merchants shall be prohibited within 100 feet of an established commercial, brick and mortar, business engaged in a similar activity at the time of the enactment of this article. It further states a minimum distance of 2,000 feet shall be maintained between locations for temporary merchants. So it's specifically saying temporary merchants need to be 2,000 feet apart, but both of them, this could be the 1,000 feet, this is the, so it's 1,000 feet to here and here, but it's 2,000 feet in between.
And I think you bring up an excellent point, and it's a discussion that we should address further as far as whether this ordinance needs to be amended and or changed.
And I think he needs some due diligence on his part to get the permission,
Mr.
as
Mayor.
well as the property owner.
I think that your analysis of the ordinance is incorrect.
Surprising.
I think that leaving aside the issue that it's very clear that this council is not going to override the decision, I think that the 2,000 feet, it's not a protection issue, as is the 1,000 feet. It is to prevent what some who drafted this ordinance would deem as an eyesore, which is too many temporary food stands or whatever the case may be.
Right.
And that's why the 2,000, the larger standard, is put in place. It has nothing to do with protection. The 1,000, I believe, is protection. And I think that's where the ordinance differs in terms of the distances.
Ms. Laybow, you had a question?
I was going to say the same thing that Rob said, to tell you the truth, so.
Alex,
Mr. Mania.
what is it that you sell?
Barbecue.
Barbecue?
Yes. Ribs, pulled pork, and chicken.
And you're located
We're located in Byram.
in Byram. How would you feel if a truck pulled Lackawanna Drive and started selling barbecue out of there? When your investment in that property, I'm sure, has been a substantial amount. How would you feel?
Well, honestly, right now, there's no other barbecue places in International Drive. So if there's a gentleman selling hot dogs, there's really no competition whatsoever when it comes to that.
Mr. Mayor?
How about working with my office to try and find a permanent location where you can operate out of? Be happy to work with you with the property owner to find out if there's a vacant store that would be suitable for you. I'd love to see you in town. I'd love to frequent your establishment. And I think that it's very clear that the council, for the reasons that have been addressed on the record, are not going to give a waiver with respect to the ordinance, but doesn't mean that Mount Olive wouldn't welcome you, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone that's sitting up here. So if that's something that interests you, Lisa Pignataro, who's in the back of the room, who works in my office, really is my liaison to the business community. Let's sit down, let's find a location where you can be successful and we can all come and eat at your establishment. Love to see it. Call my office.
I agree. I agree 100%.
Mr. Felton, I'm sure you got the gist of it. It's going to be very difficult, but again, I echo the mayor's sentiments. that we would like to see not only yourself or any other establishment, come into Mount Olive. I mean, as being a barbecue connoisseur myself, I would more than love to consume such product.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sheesh, you want to be heard?
Yes, James Sheesh, 67 Kevin Drive. I'm the hot dog vendor. I was wondering, number one, why this applicant wasn't sworn in.
We don't need to be sworn in for,
Planning
for
board.
public.
Okay, I would ask what the penalty is for lying or misstatement of material facts to a governing board.
Well, seeing as that that nobody's required to be sworn in, I'm pretty sure he could say almost anything.
Okay. You had said, Mr. Applicant, that...
Mr. Sheesh, your comments need to be addressed to the council.
Mr. President.
Mr. Mayor, hold.
Jim, we know where you're going. We're all aware of the fact, based upon emails that we got, that you had never been spoken to, never agreed, or had never agreed to waive your right. The fact is that the application was denied, and we're aware of what you're going to testify to. I don't know what purpose it serves at this point.
The purpose is that in the email, Mr. Mayor,
yes.
This gentleman is an outright liar, and I want to put that on the record. I have never been spoken to in any way, shape, or form, or never heard of ugly to the bone barbecue.
Mr. Sheesh, I would request respectfully that any remarks that you make would not be disparaging to anyone else, because then it would be unproductive.
Very good, Mr. President. Thank you. In looking at the email, I do have a number of concerns. Number one, the idea of the statement being brought up by this individual, Mr. President, that I'm a former mayor. All right? I view that, I've done over a year's worth of work, and to bring up the idea that because I'm a former mayor, there's a possibility that I was shown any type of favoritism by any department head, by any elected official in this township. If that's what's being implied, I find it very, very offensive. I spent over a year doing feasibility studies and business planning to come up with a location that did not require a waiver, simply because I didn't want someone coming up later on, asking for a waiver, being denied, and coming back saying that the only reason that I'm in a location is because I was granted a waiver for having served this community for 8 years, honorably and with integrity. I take particular offense to that, and hopefully based on my comments, and this is done and it's completed, that I don't have to use that as my reward for serving this community.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're on to resolutions.
Well, do we have to vote? Fred, do we have to vote on this?
No, no,
No, it was just a discussion based
Just
on
asking,
public
Fred.
comment. Yes, yep, gotcha. Good question.
Okay, you get extra points for that. All right, we're on to resolutions. There are 16 resolutions. Does anyone on council have any questions on any of the resolutions? Okay, seeing none, we're on to ordinances. Does anyone have any questions on the ordinance for the acquisition? Okay. Old business. Does anyone have any old business? Anybody have any new business? Ms. Leybow?
I just have a new business that I just want to bring up during the workshop. Through my real estate emails, I had received some guidelines and information about the new wastewater regulations, which talk about cesspools and whether the state is now actually forcing when the transfer of property, if there's a cesspool, a septic system needs to be installed. Unfortunately, they don't really say who's going to be responsible. They kind of leave it up in the air. I was concerned about our local ordinance and whether we needed to update our information. And Mr. Canning and Mr. Samro were very helpful, and Mr. Samro he researched it and had received some really good information on the direction we should take.
Yeah, this DEP sort of directive, it's a little bit like the well testing ordinance. It doesn't say who's really required, who's really the rather regulating authority, who's subject to penalty, who's supposed to oversee it, and things of that nature. It's silent on those things. It just says that you just can't sell a house without a cesspool, rather. And so it's our opinion that if we were to legislate in that area, we'd be taking on more than we're being asked to do right now. And then we as a township are going to be basically in the middle of these type of issues in real estate transactions. So as far as we're concerned, our advice would be not to take any affirmative action and amend an ordinance and make that a requirement. Leave it to the DEP, leave it to the buyers and sellers of property and their respective attorneys to address it. And it just wouldn't seem necessary at this point for us as a township to get in the middle of those disputes or issues and then have to regulate same and impose fines or penalties when someone's either moving in or out. And I really believe it's deficient in that it doesn't say who's required to oversee this. So it's really good to point it out that we're aware of it, but I think at this point in time we leave this to the realtors, the attorneys, and the buyers and sellers, because the DEP has just spoken, but they haven't spoken in a clear manner.
Yeah, and one other thing, I had spoken with Mr. Kenning also, one of my concerns is that if somebody were to go on to our website and check out our code and see or not see this regulation on there, perhaps we can just insert something in that location to direct them to the state guideline.
I think that would be a good idea.
So,
Mr. Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. In all due respect to Mrs. Laybow, I think what we need to do, and as long as you haven't made a decision to abolish the board, you still have an autonomous board of health that oversees septics, cesspools, as well as private wells. So you might want to forward that down to the board for comment. I know with having anything that comes from the state, as Fred was eloquent enough to put in, Colleen, you sat there as the chair, pretty much almost as long as I have. Our separation from a septic to a well is 50 foot, where the state's 100. And of course, the state's 50, we're 100. So we could reduce. We would get people that would come before us when they had redoing the property to put in a new septic tank, and they would seek relief. They met the state statute, they met the state regulation, but they couldn't meet the township. So as long as the township has the same standard or more stringent, we're okay, but we can't do anything less. So it's unfortunate, and I remember when we went through this with the Private Well Testing Act, and it was the same. The state said, well, before you can sell the house, you got to have the well tested. And they never said, well, it's you as the seller or you as the buyer. It was just kind of left, the DEP is great at doing that. You have to do this, but they don't tell you who's responsible for it.
That's,
Yep.
Yes, it is. Frank sent out an email and it directed to you and I, and talking about it at the Board of Health. But in the meantime, Fred had done some research and found out what other recommendations were. And I feel like right now our current ordinance is less than the state. That's why I want to insert onto the website referencing the state so people are at least aware of it. And then once we get better guidelines on this, then that will be the appropriate time to update our ordinance, is basically. But I'm just concerned because there's so much in my real estate. I'm sure Pat gets the same thing as an agent. It's like every single day they're having all these webinars and noticing and letting us know that this is happening, and I just think that we need to address it in some form.
And I think it's a good idea. We could take what we've discussed, and I could share it certainly with Mr. Wilpert and the Board of Health attorney, and if there's any concerns or differences of opinion or approach, I'll gladly bring it back.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other new business? Okay, we're on to our first public portion. Does anyone from the public wish to be heard on anything?
Ned McDonald, Bud Lake. First thing is ordinance 19-2012. This one for the potential eminent domain proceedings. Is this property in question, is this occupied or is it a vacant lot?
It's occupied.
It is occupied.
It's unclear. It's unclear. It's not, it's a piece of property that could be technically deemed abandoned. It's certainly not occupied as a residential structure. It may be used for some other function. And so if you're talking about occupied as a residential structure, no, it's not.
Yeah, well, my great concern is anytime there's an eminent domain proceeding, especially with a occupied dwelling. A man's home is his castle. I think the last thing should be done is to remove somebody from their domain through a legal proceeding, if at all possible, not doing it.
None of us may I?
Yes, please.
None of us necessarily disagree that this particular piece of property has particular value to the township. We had met with the property owners who had expressed an interest in selling us the piece of property. We're faced with a deadline. We didn't get a response back, and we were forced to move forward in a fashion which we believe is consistent with the best interests of Mount Olive, and ultimately maybe in the best interests of the property owner as well.
Well, I agree that it may be great value to Mount Olive, but it also could be great value to a property owner. And I think the first responsibility is to the property owner. As we all know, there have been many eminent domain cases in New Jersey, from Donald Trump trying to take some poor little lady's house for a parking lot, down to Long Branch and other places. And not only is it, to me, a bit unsavory, the whole idea of eminent domain, it can be very expensive to the township if it gets into a legal battle. And I just would hope that you really look at your conscience deeply before.
Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, just two things. One, I completely agree with you. When it comes to eminent domain, I'm a huge anti-eminent domain person because I think, like you said, a man's or woman's home is their castle. But I don't believe that's the case here, in that the people really, it's not like someone's fighting to keep their property.
Well, it sounds like you've
so you know,
looked into it, but I just do want to raise the point that...
But in this case, I don't think that's the case. My understanding that is not the case here. So, just so you know, that's my understanding.
Okay, I'll rely on your best judgment on this.
Ned, I could rest assured that this is not somebody's residence, and I do share your concern with the eminent domain issue, and just the thought that government can just come in and, because they don't like the way you're using your property, and we think we can do better with it.
As we all know,
it's
a real problem.
Bothers me to no end. So
okay.
I share your views on that behalf.
Great. The other matter is the resolution of the Township Council concerning the Mount Olive Soccer Club. This piece of land in the park, is there going to be public access to this land once it's developed with whatever improvements are done on it? Or is it going to be specifically for the benefit of the soccer club?
Yes, and there will still be public access, and as a matter of fact, if this agreement's approved, it has to be approved by the DEP Green Acres. Yes.
So when the soccer club's not using it, the public will have access to it. Is that my understanding?
They'll be able to use it like any other recreation field, located within the township, that they need to go through the rec department.
Yes. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, you had a comment on it?
Yeah, I mean, so speaking frankly, the soccer club is going to be paying a lot of money to do the upgrade on the field, and realistically, soccer has become an 11-month-a-year season.
Yeah.
that field will be in use by the soccer club as needed and will take up the majority of the time that the field's in use.
Of course.
When the field is not scheduled and not in use, there will be prohibitions against what you can do to the field. In other words, it's being set up by the soccer club as a soccer field. Anyone can use the field during time frames that soccer is not on it, which will be, certainly limited time frame, but there will be time when other people will be on the field using it when soccer is not using it. But they will not be able to modify the field. Soccer is paying a lot of money to do this improvement on a field that the township otherwise would not be able to improve. We've had significant problems in terms of maintaining this field because of the nature of the sand underbase and the inability to hold enough water on the field. And so this is a field which is being taken from almost unplayable to something which is going to be used around the clock by the residents of Mount Olive, and mostly by the soccer club, but as Mr. Semrau said, it's a Green Acres facility. Everyone has the right to use the facilities when they're not scheduled otherwise.
Okay. Who will make the determination of when the general public can use that? Will it be the soccer club or will it be the town?
Soccer club generally will schedule the fields the same way that they schedule the fields now. Same thing, that they go through the rec department and they indicate to the rec department when it is that they intend to be using the fields. They block it out. Baseball does the same, football does the same, and during the other time frames, the fields are in use for the general public.
Great, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anyone else from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn to the public meeting?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Mr. Meany is really Okay, at this time, I'd like to call to order the Mount Olive Township Council public meeting of June 12th, 2012. Lisa, could you please read the Open Public Meetings Act announcement?
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakes Town Road, Mount Olive Township, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same.
Roll call.
Mr. Perkins?
Here.
Mr. Mania?
Here.
Mr. Ferrante?
Here.
Mr. Nicastro?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mrs. Leybow?
Here.
Mr. Roman?
Here. Okay, we're on to approval of previous minutes. Mr. Perkins?
Yes, I move the approval of the May 22nd, 2012 workshop and public meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Mr. Perkins?
Abstain.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante?
Yes.
Mr. Nicastro?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mrs. Leybow?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Abstain. Okay, we're on to a proclamation from the mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. From the Office of the Mayor, proclamation honoring Jazz in July in Mount Olive. Whereas Jazz in July was initiated in July 2003 with 4 concerts featuring such jazz legends as alto saxophonist Phil Woods and trombonist Irby Green, which is now in its 9th year. And whereas Jazz in July has featured such jazz greats as Bucky Pizzarelli, David Fathead Newman, Houston Pearson, Jay Leonhardt, and many other great jazz players. And whereas Jazz in July features a wide variety of jazz, from Dixieland to swing to bebop, along with mainstream and Latin jazz, consisting of trios of 20-piece big bands as well as exceptional jazz vocalists. And whereas Jazz in July will hold 4 jazz concerts in the Mount Olive Middle School Theater in Bud Lake, New Jersey during this month of July. And whereas over the last 3 years the concerts have been successful and the audience has gotten larger with bands coming from New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York. Now therefore being proclaimed that I, Robert Greenbaum, Mayor of Mount Olive Township, do hereby recognize jazz is America's musical treasure and the amazing talent of the jazz musicians, and welcome them and the audiences that attend these concerts each year. Be it further resolved that I, Robert Greenbaum, proclaim the month of July is Jazz in July in the Township of Mount Olive, and I look forward to many more concerts in the years to come. Robert Greenbaum, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Never thought I would hear you say the words fathead and bebop and...
He says it all the time.
Okay, we're on to correspondence. There are 50 pieces of correspondence. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, we're on to ordinances for public hearing. I open the hearing to the public on ordinance number 17-2012 entitled, An Ordinance of the Township of Mount Olive amending ordinance number 3-2012, which established salaries for the mayor, council, department heads, supervisory personnel, and employees of the township clerk's office. Mr. Mania.
Mr. President, I move ordinance number 17-2012 for adoption and final passage.
Okay, does anyone from the public wish to be heard?
Second.
Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. Does anybody have any, council have any questions, discussions? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Frente?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes. Ordinance number 17-2012 is passed on second reading, and I hereby direct the clerk to forward a copy of the same to the mayor and publish the notice of adoption as required by law. I open the hearing to the public on ordinance number 18-2012 entitled, An Ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Mount Olive, County of Morris, and State of New Jersey to amend and supplement the Property Maintenance Code of the Township of Mount Olive. Mr. Ferrante?
I move for adoption and final passage of ordinance number 18-2012.
Second.
Second.
Been moved to second. Does anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none. Anyone from council? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Frente?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes. Ordinance number 18-2012 is passed on second reading, and I hereby direct the clerk to forward a copy of the same to the mayor and publish a notice of adoption as required by law. Okay, we're on to ordinances for first reading. With a second reading of June 26, 2012. Ordinance number 19-2012 entitled, An Ordinance of the Township of Mount Olive, County of Morris, and the State of New Jersey authorizing the acquisition of certain property known as 20-23 Stonewalled Court Drive, Bud Lake, New Jersey, also known as Block 3203, Lots 21 and 28, and if necessary, authorizing the institution of eminent domain proceedings. Mr. Nacastro?
Yes, I move ordinance number 19-2012 to be introduced by title and passed on first reading, and that a meeting be held on June 26, 2012 at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, for public hearing, consideration of second reading and passage of said ordinance, and that the clerk be directed to publish, post, and make available said ordinance in accordance with the requirements of the law.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and second. Any council discussion? Mr. Perkins?
Just a brief comment, Mr. President. I have to commend the administration for chasing after this piece. Unlike some of our previous, we are now quasi-forced into doing what I don't think any person sitting in government really wants to do, and that is an eminent domain issue. We are hopeful that it does not get to that, but we have to protect the interests of the township. And again, I'd like to thank the administration and the mayor's office for pursuing this. That's it, Mr. President.
Does anyone else from council wish to be heard? I'd just like to put my 2 cents in. The word eminent domain obviously should cower almost any public official when it's their time comes to use it. And I'm always of the belief that a property owner always knows what's in his best interest and what to do with his property. And it grinds me to knowing that we're being forced by the state and the COA to engage in activity that most of us would never think of doing were it not for the hand of Big Brother and the state. So that is my 2 cents on that. Roll call.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Frente?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
2 cents. This project will help 20 both deserving and needy families. Yes.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Abstain. Okay. Ordinance number 19-2000, oops, I apologize. We're on now to consent resolutions. Does anyone on council want to remove any of the 19 consent resolutions to non-consent? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Walsh?
I move consent resolutions 1 through, there's 19, I only have 18 here. We got a revision? 19, oh, I see the 19, okay. 1 through 9, I move resolutions 1 through 19.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded.
Council President, can that be with the amendment to resolution number 4 that would authorize the administrator to make any non-substantial changes to the agreement?
Yes. Does anyone have any opposition to that?
No.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Does anyone from the public wish to be heard on the consent resolutions? Seeing none, and any council comments? Roll call.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes on to all, including the amended number 4.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Frente?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes. Okay, we're on to consent motions. Ms. Laybow?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move consent motions number 1 and number 2.
It's been moved and seconded. Now it's been moved and seconded. Sean, just got a quick question. Michelle Armbrick, is she a current employee?
Yes.
Yes, she's been the deputy court administrator for within the court, and Jennifer's assistant for some time now.
Many years.
Yes.
Many years.
She's been vetted through the county Superior Court, and they approved her background. And her,
I'm glad to see that we're promoting from within, and that the court will proceed with minimal interruptions. Okay, roll call.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Frente?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes. Any administrative reports?
Yes, one bit of very potentially exciting news I've already shared with those of you who I've run into. I got a very pleasant call from the county administrator, John Bonani. As we all know, in the past, Morris County has engaged in solar projects about various pilot locations around the county. Well, when this letter came out, and I'm sure council got a copy about 2 months ago, it only indicated that it would not fulfill our goals. And one of our goals is to get a solar array parking overhang in the back lot here. We think that'd be very fruitful. The initial program didn't allow for that. In speaking with Mr. Bonani last week, he indicated that the program was amended. They reached out to Mount Olive, feeling that our location here is very suitable. So it looks like we're going to be getting a call and proceeding down the road at no cost to the township. And they're not only looking at our back lot array, our roof, as well as possibly the high school. So
Wow.
Superintendent Reynolds was notified as well. I thanked Mr. Bonani rather profusely, and we're looking forward to seeing how this unfolds.
Oh, that's great. Great news.
And if they don't do it, they're going to have to pay some penalties, am I correct? If the county doesn't do what's been proposed to do?
Well, I don't have anything in writing yet. I'm looking forward to the proposal and at no cost, and us getting an energy savings. It would be ours after 15 years, and we'd reap all the benefits of the SREC market for what it may be at that point.
Which hopefully
is better than today.
Okay, we're on to last old business. Anybody? New business? Legal matters.
The only thing I would report is we had the closing on Charters Farm, and we reconciled all the closing costs. There was a credit that you authorized before the closing, and today we received a check from the county. They agreed with all of the adjustments, so we received a check for just over $5,000 that I'll send back to the CFO, and that wraps it up. There's no loose ends, and we have an active farm. So that's my report. Thank you.
All right, we're on to council reports. I'll start off with recreation. Baseball is obviously winding down. Most rec teams have started playing their playoffs. I myself have mine to play in a couple days, and it's amazing how when you go through other townships or when people come into town, that how they compliment us on the plethora of recreational programs that we have to offer. and of the new ones that we keep expanding. And I also like to compliment the administration for putting up the signs over at Turkey Brook. I'm assuming we'll be having the rest of the signs up in the other parks shortly. And for those of you that are not aware what signs I'm referring to, they're basically signs that remind parents and spectators that the children at play are just that, children, and to make sure that when making any comments that are purely in the encouraging nature, and it's surprising all the years that I've coached that how often you hear negative comments coming from adults. You know, you would think that it would be children, you know, saying disparaging remarks, but it's not. It's unfortunately it's adults, and I'm hoping that the signs that are throughout, and by all means, if you're ever in Turkey Brook, you know, head on down by the fields and just, you know, just take a ponder and read the signs there. Okay. Yes, Ms. Labo.
If I could just make a comment for the recreation on May 31st, Recreation Department had the Grand Prix up at Turkey Brook Park, and I had my grandson, and we went up there. We were a little bit early, and I just want to share that it was really a wonderful experience. I mean, going up there, we started out, you know, we walked over, saw what was going on. They were setting up. We walked over to the playground, and like right before our eyes, we basically saw Turkey Brook Park come alive for the evening events. And first it was kind of quiet. There wasn't a whole bunch of people. Then one family came with their 3 children playing the playground, and they had their dinner. They brought their dinner with them. And then some more families came. Some more kids were playing. Soccer coaches started showing up, bringing their equipment on the fields. And all of a sudden, like all around you, all of this activity just blossomed. And then the Grand Prix, it was really, really fantastic. And the big monster truck came, and the mayor came, and wait, that was right, the monster truck, and of course the mayor was there, which was really nice. And I don't mean to be really melodramatic, but I just was like kind of looking around, thinking how incredibly lucky we are. And to just watch all of this activity come to life around us, and so I just wanted to kind of share that, because I think that our staff, our recreation, our buildings and grounds, everybody just, none of this would not happen if everybody wasn't working together to make it happen and have this wonderful facility for our residents. Yes,
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, on that front, I wasn't here for the administrative matters, but I wanted to recognize two efforts. Among other efforts on behalf of the administration. One is Jim Lynch, the baseball tournament this year. Jim had to put in an extraordinary effort under difficult circumstances to get the fields into what were described to me as perfect shape. And there was a lot of effort by Jim and his staff to make that happen in a very short time frame. Also wanted to just recognize Gene Pazinski's effort in terms of putting together the agreements with both soccer and football, which he did under extreme time deadline. And Mount Olive, all of Mount Olive will benefit through Gene's efforts in that regard.
Thank you very much. Board of Health, Mr. Perkins.
Nothing to report.
Legislative Committee?
Yes. Did you have something?
Hope so.
No? Oh, thank you, sir. I just wanted to note, thanks to Governor Christie leading the charge for income tax reductions, which I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt here, thanks to pressure from people all over the state of New Jersey, including but not limited to myself, the Star Ledger, New Jersey Senate President Sweeney, the New Jersey Assembly, and many others, pressuring him to look into property tax reductions. He is considering supporting it. The Senate has put forth a bill, and the Assembly is also looking at it. They're looking at between 10% and up to 20% property tax reductions with a cap of either $1,000 or $2,000 all across the state. As I said before, as you all well know, I am much more in favor of property tax decreases in front of income tax decreases. If we're going to increase one, I would prefer it to be property tax. I won't go into the million reasons why. So there is progress being made, but nothing's final yet. to the public, to everybody up here, I would say please keep the pressure on because we deserve property tax relief. Thank you.
Mr. Perkins, you wanted anything?
Just briefly, Mr. President, 2 weeks ago, I had the pleasure of attending the New Jersey Apartment Association meeting in Atlantic City, and Senator Rojo, our senator from the 24th Legislative District, was provided an award for his continuing efforts on affordable housing. I know that comes at a key point since that was one of our discussion items this evening. I do have the senator's ear on occasion and a few of the assembly folks, and still trying to get the Board of Public Utilities to remove the smart growth requirement out of the Clean Energy Fund so that if we do end up with homeless solutions, things that we've provided, that they build an energy efficient home, that they should be able to share in those incentives that are paid for through the societal benefits charge. So he is leading some of the legislation on that. So with any luck in 2013, we ought to see something moving that way.
Thank you very much. Planning Board, Mr. Walsh.
Last meeting was canceled. Next meeting is not going to be this Thursday, but the following. That's all I have there. And Board of Education, I'll have a report next meeting.
Open Space, Mr. Ferrante.
Nothing in particular, just a service announcement that the Open Space Committee is always looking for anyone interested in maintaining and cleaning the trails. They could reach out to Kathy Murphy, Bob Del Pizzo, or myself.
Lake, anything on Lake Environmental?
No.
On Library?
Another announcement, the library's got a lot of events going on throughout the summer for both children and adults. And they're also starting their Fall Fest planning. So if anybody out there is interested, please reach out to Scott Davin or myself.
Okay. Safety Committee, Mr. Nicastro.
Nothing to report on either safety or economic development.
Mr. Nicastro, if I could just, on the Safety Committee, I was wondering if next time you have a meeting, if you could address the issue of possibly the Old Wolf Road, looking into the possibility whether they have an opinion on turning that into a one-way out.
One way out? Okay.
You know, just because that intersection, you know, seeing as I see that directly across from me, it is somewhat dangerous.
On the highway, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And Senior Citizen, Mr. Mania.
Nothing.
Pride Committee, Ms. Labelle.
Nothing.
And TNR.
TNR had their yard sale, their annual spring yard sale at the after 206 last weekend. And even though the donations were less than what they had been in the past, because a lot of people basically are having a lot of yard sales trying to meet their financial obligations, we ended up actually making $100 more than our last sale. And we had a lot of people stop by and tell us that they were really happy with the job that we're doing, and it was really a great time. So I do thank the public for supporting our efforts and visiting our sale. And also the after for being fantastic. They let us use the bottom half of their parking lot, and I know that the Boy Scouts from Troop 312 used it for their flower sale this past Easter and did really well. So I think it's wonderful that the business helps with our service organizations to raise funds as well.
Thank you very much. We're on to our last public portion. Does anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none. Council comments. Mr. Perkins.
None.
Mr. Mania?
None.
Mr. Ferrante?
None.
Mr. Nicastro?
Yeah, I just want to say a couple of things that I wanted to, for those that weren't at the first gala. There was a few of us there. It was a fantastic event put together. We had a lot of a good turnout there for the first one. Hopefully that's going to grow. Also wanted to, last night I was at the Girl Scout Awards at the middle school, which was just a phenomenal turnout. I was just amazed at how many girls, I'd never been to one of these, how many there are, and the volunteers. And then over at the high school, I was over there watched the scholarship awards, and it just amazed me that the amount of individuals, family, and businesses that get together and donate these scholarships, the amount of money that they do in this community is just amazing with that. And lastly, I wanted to congratulate our former mayor, Scapicchio, on his primary win for Freeholder. And wish him luck.
Mr. Walsh?
I just want to reiterate what Councilwoman LaBelle was saying. We are really lucky to live in Mount Olive. Thank you.
Ms. Labelle?
Yes, I wanted to say that last night my grandson decided to be adventuresome and fell out of his crib head first onto the floor. And it was, of course, anybody who's had children or been around children, they have these falls. It is absolutely devastating. And as you all know, a couple years ago, we had a situation where we were in possible jeopardy of losing our volunteers. A lot of people mentioned that the one thing that the residents came and they spoke and they said, when you have an emergency, you want, you see somebody, a familiar face, and it's very reassuring. Well, we called the doctor, and I had already called the Fred ambulance, and I have to say, as panicked and worried as we were, my grandson screaming, a big egg on his head, and I saw our Bud Lake volunteers drive down the street, and the first one was Barry Seifert, who's the captain now, and he has twins, babies, and I have to tell you, the feeling of relief that just really came over me, just because it was familiar faces, people I trusted. It wasn't some stranger coming down the street, while a stranger would also be qualified. It was just so unbelievably reassuring, and they were there in 4 minutes. It was incredible. Got the baby to the hospital. He's fine. And we had him to the doctor for a checkup today. He's doing fantastic. We're all exhausted, and hopefully we don't ever have to go through that again. But I do want to thank our volunteers very much. Our police department was there, and it was thankfully a situation that could have been very devastating ended up being okay.
Thank you very much, and I have nothing. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Meeting adjourned.